Good evening. Welcome to the board meeting for Prince George's County Board of Education. Today is June the 18th, 2013. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to the citizens of Prince George's County, particularly from the last election, District 5 residents who have put their confidence in me to serve on the board. I also want to take the opportunity to say thank you to my colleagues who have the 2006, 2010, and 2012 Board of Education who have saw fit to elect me as their chair. I want to congratulate the board for the hard work that you've done over the last several years. And at this time, I want to take this opportunity as well to say that as we talk about what's best for kids, that is our focus. So the other day, someone asked us what was unique about Prince George's County. And what came to mind was that we are now a 13-member board, the largest in the state of Maryland. And as this being our dais, the children are the center of our universe. And they come first, period, end of story. And so as long as we stay focused on kids and do what's best for them, we will always be successful. And when we're not focused on kids, we will fail. And when adults fail, kids fail. And that is not an option. And so I wanted to say thank you again. Today, however, marks a new beginning in leadership for the Board of Education. And Dr. Eubanks, at this time, as I said to you when you were sworn in, this is the hardest work I've ever done in my life. So be prepared, I'm sure you are. But I also have confidence that if we stay focused, as I said, and I have confidence in your ability and your willingness to serve children in this county, and look forward to working with you and being a valued member of this Board of Education. And with that, I will formally pass the gavel to you and wish you very much success in your role as chair of this Board of Education, and encourage every single citizen in Prince George's County to do what is right for kids and support this board.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jacobs. Good evening, citizens of Prince George's County. I guess since I have the gavel, my first job is to bang it once to call the meeting to order again. Good evening again. Thank you. You will talk a lot more about the important work we have ahead in today's meeting. But for now, we'll start the meeting. So, Ms. Eubanks, would you please lead the board prayer and Pledge of Allegiance? Thank you, Ms. Eubanks. Ms. Parker, please call the roll.
Dr. Anderson. Present. Ms. Beck.
Present.
Mr. Burrows. Ms. Epps.
Here.
Ms. Eubanks.
Present.
Ms. Fallows.
Present.
Ms. Higgins.
Here.
Ms. Jacobs.
Here.
Dr. Kaufman. Present. Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Ms. Waller.
Present.
Ms. Ahmad. Ms. Boston. Dr. Eubanks.
Present. Thank you. Please have it noted that our colleague Ed Burrows is out of the country, and our student member is not able to join us in public session today. Colleagues, prior to the adoption of the agenda, please note the following changes. Item 2.6, 2.7, and 2.8 have been renumerated in the agenda. Item 5.1, reconciliation and adoption of fiscal year 2014 annual operating budget, has been removed as a discussion item and placed under item 10.7 as a presentation. Item 5.2, Capital Improvement Program for funding years 2015-2020, has been removed from the agenda. Lastly, Budget Consent Agenda Item 7.5, Tulip Grove Elementary School, Major Renovation Addition, increase in scope of work for architect and engineering services, has been removed from the agenda. Colleagues, may I have a motion to adopt the June 18, 2013 Board Meeting Agenda as amended?
So moved.
Excuse me.
Ms. Higgins.
Mr. Chair, could I make a motion that we move the 11.1 public comment on non-agenda items to after 3.1 public comment on agenda items, so those people do not have to wait?
So moved. Seconded by Ms. Waller. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now with that additional change, may I have a motion to adopt the board agenda item as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Boston. Seconded. All in favor? All opposed? We have adopted the board agenda. Colleagues, may I please have a motion to approve the May 9th, 2013 board minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes have been approved. Item 2.6, report of the chair. I will start first by yielding the floor to Madam Vice Chair Boston for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you. I wanted to take a point of privilege to recognize our former chair, Regina Jacobs, for your work, your dedication, for the years of your 6 years as chair of this committee. Presented to Regina M. Jacobs, Esquire, in appreciation of your leadership and your years of dedicated service as the board chair for Prince George's County Board of Education from December the 3rd, 2007 to May the 30th, 2013. Your visionary guidance and exemplary leadership has guided this board to the level that has prospered. Your unwavering support of students, staff, and constituents of Prince George's County is attributable to your commitment to improving education and ensuring equitable access to a quality education for all students. Presented on this 18th day of June 2013, respectfully, Prince George's County Board of Education.
Thank you.
We wanted to take the time, if any other board members would like to say something, please do so.
Ms. Higgins.
Yes. I want to join many people who have made those comments to me and the colleagues that have spoken about the dedication and commitment that you have consistently shown. Your skill in running a meeting, despite our best efforts, that our new chair will find to be equally challenging. I certainly have marveled as well at your talent and as your ability and at your commitment, as well as been very grateful for your willingness to step up to be chair. It is a very challenging position, and personally appreciate your work, and I know that I speak for many in the county. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm so used to saying Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity. To Ms. Jacobs, certainly I appreciate all that you've done since I've been on the board and since 2007. It's more than a notion to be a member of the Board of Education. And when you accept the responsibility of being the chair of a body of different personalities, and you have to mold yourself, be flexible, and certainly you sacrifice a lot of your life and your time from your family and your community, and I'm sure in some instances the district in which you were elected to represent. And so during the several years that we've worked together, I've watched you mature, I've watched you grow, and yes, we have had those girl-to-girl conversations in which we had to come to have an understanding. We did not always agree, but we were not disagreeable, and certainly I appreciate the opportunity of working with you and serving with you, and I wish you and your family all the best.
Would you like to add any additional words? Ms. Jacobs?
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you again, Ms. Jacobs. For the board chair's report, my first board chair's report, I want to give thanks and hopefully give just a few brief remarks and thoughts about where we go from here. I want to thank first my colleagues on the board, my new colleagues, all of whom are new, and both my elected colleagues and my appointed colleagues. I want to particularly thank you for the level of camaraderie, the level of respect and engagement you've given me since day one. It has indeed been a steep learning curve, and your support and your professional colleagueship has meant a lot to me. Particularly thank you, Regina Jacobs, for your help and assistance. It is indeed a challenge both to run this meeting. I'm hoping you don't see just how nervous I am right now at my first board meeting, but it's indeed a tremendous honor and challenge to take this on, and you've made my transition so much incredibly easier, so thank you for that. I want to thank County Executive Rasharon Baker for his trust and faith in me. I want to thank some of my colleagues. Many of you may not know, we had a commission on education excellence. One of my colleagues, Dean Wiseman, in fact, is here this evening. And much of what I might offer in terms of innovative ideas to help improve our system came from the intensive and thoughtful dialogue that we had at on our commission. I want to thank my colleagues at the National Education Association. Yes, I do actually have a day job, and I thank my colleagues at the National Education Association for giving me the flexibility to be able to follow my passions and hopefully to give back to the community that I love so dearly. And of course, I want to thank my family for tolerating my family, who literally has not seen me for the last 2 weeks, and thank them for their support, my wife and my 4 children. So in terms of board report, part of what I think a chair's report is to talk about what I've been up to. So for the past couple of weeks since I was sworn in on, I was informed on Friday, sworn in on Saturday, and sat down for my first meeting with my colleagues on Tuesday, and it's been quite a whirlwind ever since. Over the past couple of weeks, I've met with most of the current elected board members one-on-one, and have had tremendously fruitful and informative meetings with them, and they've given me some valuable information and support for where we want to head as a board. I've met with most of the superintendent's executive cabinet and have been impressed and simply blown away by the depth of knowledge, skill, and commitment that these professionals bring to their work every day. I've met with Mr. Superintendent on numerous occasions, and his guidance and wisdom have also been extremely important for me. I've met with the board staff, and I want to give a special thanks to Shawnee Jackson, Thea Wilson, Tiffany Parker, and Lori Anderson, just a group of consummate professional women who are keeping me on the straight and narrow. Any and everything that I say properly tonight, they helped me with. Any and everything that I make a mistake on, I'm completely on my own. So thank you for that support. Just briefly, a few words about where we head from here. Prince George's County and its public schools are preparing to enter what I believe to be a new era of change. This historic process that began on June 1st creates a new governance structure for our schools and an unprecedented level of shared responsibility for schools among county elected officials. This change answers the cry that many residents have had for years about expanding and increasing the support for public schools among all levels of governance in our system. And I think we stand at the threshold of what could very well be a shift in the educational paradigm of Prince George's County. I think there are two big issues that I've been passionate about when it comes to Prince George's public schools that I like to talk about when I talk about the challenges we have in front of us. The first is that we must recognize that we have a good school system. We have a very good school system. Not too long ago, Jay Matthews of the Washington Post wrote an article called "Don't Mess with the Success of Prince George's County." In his article at that point, he was referring to the significant increase in the number of our students taking and passing advanced placement courses and the exams that go along with them. And he could have been talking about any number of things. We know, for example, this year, this month in June, over 8,000 students graduated from Prince George's County Public Schools. These students, this class of 2013, earned almost $100 million in college scholarships. We increasingly have expanded our AP enrollment in course, and while we have far to go, each year a higher percentage of our students pass the challenging AP exams, and there are a long list, too long to go through, but I will be sharing with you in future board chair reports great things going on in individual schools across our great county. So, our residents should know that the school system's performance and achievement of our students far outpaces the negative image that that are often portrayed in the media and perpetuated by some of our own misperceptions. Many of us, I'm afraid I'm on that list, have friends and colleagues who refuse to send their kids to our public schools for fear that they'll be subjected to all manners of academic and social horrors. Those of us with children in the system, and that includes me and my two in public schools here in Prince George's County, simply haven't seen these horror stories and demand that the successes of our schools be recognized and celebrated. So our first job in this new system is to not mess with the success of Prince George's County Public Schools. We must let every resident know that our schools are safe, nurturing, and academically enriching places to send their children. Now, the second reality we face may seem like a bit of a contradiction, but I think it's not. Our schools are good, but good is not good enough. We're right to celebrate our successes, but those who claim that we should be satisfied are dead wrong. Some people point to our history, to our student population, to our diversity, or to our economic challenges, and claim that we're as good as can be expected. Many of these well-meaning folks tell us that we should do things like stop living in the shadows of Montgomery County. They claim that comparisons to other places lessen our accomplishments, and that these comparisons are unfair anyway because a lot of these folks have a lot more money than we do. This argument may be well-meaning, but is wrong, in my opinion, nonetheless. It tells us that we ought to be happy with good because we've had it bad for so long. It tells us that it's not realistic to expect to be great and to enjoy the kind of greatness and success that many of our neighbors already enjoy. I'm a sports fan, and my wife tells me not to use sports analogies, but I'm hard-headed, so here goes. Any sports fan will tell you that every athlete or team worth their salt compares themselves to the best and strives to be there. This must be true for the hopes and expectations that we have for our children, as it is that we have for our favorite Washington sports teams. So anyone who tells us that the goal of being the best is unreasonable is telling us that we shouldn't believe in our children or the adults who serve them. We believe in them both. So, of course, this is a challenging and a long-term commitment to excellence, yet anything short will keep us mired in mediocrity. And in a public school system with a lot of great schools and a lot of good schools and too many schools that aren't serving the students the way they can. Now, I believe this new system has the potential to offer us a new day for parental and community engagement that will be more inclusive to our residents, will hold all of our leaders more accountable, and will be in the best interest of all of our students. In the award-winning book, Good to Great, author Jim Collins states, there is nothing wrong with pursuing a vision for greatness. He points out that greatness is not achieved by a single act. So I make it quite clear that a piece of legislation and a few people sitting here on the dais won't get it done alone. Instead, greatness is achieved by unwavering belief and relentless pursuit. This new system of bold leadership points us in the right direction, but now it's our turn as residents and leaders to move this vision of greatness forward. So thank you, colleagues. I look forward to working with you day in and day out to make that vision happen and to move us forward. I want to, at this time, take a point of personal privilege. I've said my few words, but we have 3 other new board members who are joining us who I'd like to introduce you to this evening. I will start on my right with Dr. Beverly Anderson.
Good evening. I'm very pleased to be here. I've dedicated myself to education for more than 40 years, to improving the education of our children at all levels. And I've also dedicated a major part of my life to improving the health of our children so that they will go into our schools ready to learn. My experience has been in higher education for the last 43 years, taking about 6 of those years out to direct 1 3-year period to direct a national program entitled Making Mathematics Work for Minorities for the National Research Council, and another 2 years with the Department of Defense, working with the Chancellor of Post-Secondary Civilian Education. My focus at those institutions, as well as at the University of the District of Columbia, where I spent 40 years off and on, was to set high standards for students' performance and to work very hard with faculty and staff and administrators to make sure that our students reach higher standards. I've served in the capacity of a professor of mathematics, and I've also served as a department chair of mathematics, a dean of a College of Arts and Sciences, and as a provost of an institution. I am very pleased to be here today. I thank the county executive for having confidence in me, and of course I look forward to working with each and every member of the board to do all that can and must be done so that we can deliver what the residents of Prince George's County deserve, and that is an excellent public school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. Mr. Curtis Valentine.
Thank you, Chairman. I did not have any remarks prepared, so I'll just reiterate what I said yesterday when I was appointed to this position by the County Council. And as much as this position is an honor to me and my family, I will say what I said yesterday, which is this is not about me. This school reform that we've seen over the last few months is not about Seguin Eubanks or even about Rashawn Baker. It's about the over 130,000 students who go to our schools every day. It's about the parents who entrust the future of their children to us. And it's about the parents who have, as Chairman said, taken their children out of the school system. I think we have a formula for success. We are hopeful that we will achieve everything that we endeavor to do. But I will say what I said yesterday, we cannot do it alone. As was said earlier, we are just the beginning, the first steps in a long process of creating a system that we all envisioned when many of us moved here, and many of the systems that many of you grew up here having. So I'm thankful for this honor and look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Valentine. Dr. Daniel Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to my colleagues on the board for warmly welcoming me into your midst, and also to the County Executive, Baker, and his staff for allowing me to serve in this position. I'm extremely excited about what I feel is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I have 2 daughters, one who is rising second grader at Kenilworth Elementary School, where she's doing quite well. And so I'm certainly familiar with a lot of the good that the school system has to offer. I also have a newborn daughter who's 3 weeks old, and so I had to think twice before taking this position if it was the right time, but again, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And as I said yesterday also in my remarks, I really want to use this opportunity to work with my colleagues, to work with students, parents, educators across the county to ensure, as the chairman said, that we don't just have pockets of goodness or pockets of greatness, but that we have the best possible education that we can offer to every child in this county. And when we talk about the best, we're not just talking about the best in Maryland. We're talking about among the best education in the world. Some may say that's too high of a goal to shoot for, but I think it's achievable if we work together. And we must do it because the world that we live in, the 21st century economy and the demands that our workers have require us to give them a level of rigor in their education and the types of tools to be successful that we didn't have to have as when we were going through school, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So we have our work cut out for us, but I'm very optimistic that working with all of you, we can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kaufman. And, as you get to know us, and hopefully you know the extremely impressive and long-term commitment of the elected board, along with the new members of this board, we will work cooperatively, we will work collaboratively, we will work in the best interest of the residents and the students of Prince George's County, and we'll do it with a great deal of integrity. And with that, that is the end of my chair's report, and I will yield the floor to Superintendent Crawley for the superintendent's report. Dr. Crawley.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening. First, I'd like to join the board in thanking Ms. Jacobs for her leadership on the board. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome our new board education chair, Dr. Eubanks, and our 3 new board members, Dr. Anderson, Dr. Kaufman, and Mr. Valentine. We welcome you to the Board of Education and look forward to working with you as we continue our goal that all students in Prince George's County graduate college and career ready. As our chair indicated, we celebrated the graduation of 8,000 plus students from our school system. And I'd like to extend a special kudos to all of the parents, to the teachers, staff, and others that played a key role in helping these young people reach their goal of graduating from our school system, college and career ready. We wish them well, and we know that we will hear about their successes, and hopefully some of them will be back working with us in Prince George's County, either in the school system or in other areas. On May 29th, we celebrated nearly 100 educators who earned their teaching certification through alternative routes. These educators, many of whom are recent college graduates or career changers, took part in one of our 4 programs, including the Prince George's County Resident Teacher Program, the University of Maryland's MSMART program, Howard University's Ready to Teach program, and Teach for America. We'd like to extend congratulations on earning your certification, and we look forward to seeing you in the classroom in Prince George's County Public Schools. Congratulations to students and staff at BOE High School who will soon be seeing improvements to their athletic fields thanks to a $17,000 grant for muscle milk. More than 600 high schools applied for the muscle milk recovery grant, and only 22 schools were selected. Although students and teachers are on break, I want all of our families to know that the work continues in anticipation of another exciting school year. We are completing maintenance projects on school buildings. We're working to train our school leaders, filling vacant positions, developing bus routes, and preparing student schedules. This summer, we are focusing on opening 2 new schools, Oxon Hill High School and Avalon Elementary School. And we're busy installing wireless networks in our buildings and making improvements to security as well as bus transportation. On August 10th, we will host our annual Back to School Fair from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Showplace Arena here in Upper Marlboro. This is a one-stop event for all the information you need to know about Prince George's County Public Schools, our programs, and back-to-school needs, and includes our crowd-pleasing backpack giveaway event. So we ask that all of our parents mark this day on your calendar, August 10th, and we hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We will now have a news break entitled Senior Success Stories.
Over 8,000 students graduated from our 24 high schools in Prince George's County Public Schools this year. As each one turned their tassel, they no doubt could tell their own unique story. As they walk out with their high school diplomas, we highlight a few, starting with a young lady and her first day of walking into one of our schools.
The first time I walked in, I was like, am I really here? I'm in the United States. Like, I just came from my country and I'm here with all these new people. I don't know anybody, but then I walked in shy, but I just kept my head up high.
Isioma Obima will walk out of Duval High School with her head held high as the school's valedictorian. Duval is the only school Isioma attended after moving to the United States from Nigeria. And for her, there wasn't a better place to be.
No matter what people say about Duval outside, they haven't been in the school to experience it. It's nothing like people say. We have really good teachers, really caring administrators like, Dr. Johnson. And we have teachers to guide us and prepare us for college.
Isioma has taken full advantage of her time at Duval, even foregoing the lunchroom to return to the classroom.
She's a good math student. She likes to ask questions. She bugs you until you teach her the right method, until she gets it understanding, which is great. She's willing to help others. She stays in at lunch, so I have to deal with her all the time. She's a nice kid. You can't ask for any more.
Isioma will be attending the University of Maryland College Park in the fall, where she has been accepted as an honor student. This is the next step on a path that she plans on leading to her being a neurosurgeon.
My mom told me that it doesn't matter whatever I want to do as long as I'm happy. And then I read this book by Dr. Ben Carson, Gifted Hands. That was where I was inspired the most. I saw all he had to go through, working with the brain, how complicated that is. And I want to do something like that. I want to be able to inspire people. I want to be able to help people, even with something as delicate and complicated as the brain.
Before she steps on campus in College Park, Isioma had to take those steps in a cap and gown across the stage for graduation.
To know that I've accomplished something so big to graduate from. Not a lot of people get the opportunity to graduate, and I'm going to feel like elated and just, wow, blown out of my mind.
Alvin Jackson is a football player. Alvin Jackson is also a track and field athlete. Alvin Jackson also almost died after being shot 3 times.
I still have a bullet in my leg. It's just in a concealed case, so it can't move. And then they had to take an artery out my groin area. So, because my main artery was gone, I was losing too much blood. So my mother told them to transfer an artery from my groin to my leg. And I have about 300 stitches and staples, because it's also on this side too. So, based on this side, it's like 300 stitches and staples and a little bit of rods.
Alvin spent over 6 months in the hospital after being shot the summer before his sophomore year. He was motivated to get better by his desire to play football and run track, as well as help from a younger sibling.
I'm not a big fan of saying I can't do it, but I was very down on myself because every time I tried to get up and walk, I would fall down. And I was just like, oh my God, is it going to get any better? And it just felt like it was getting worse, not better. But my little brother, one day he was just like, you know what, you're stronger than this. Like, come on, you got it. And that was sort of my role model at the time, even though that's my younger brother. He motivated me.
Alvin not only excelled in athletics after his rehab, but his grades improved as well. He's a 3.0 honor roll student and has found another passion, that of working with his hands in the Career and Technical Education program. He will combine all three of these after high school graduation when he attends an apprenticeship school in Newport News, where he will play football as well as holding a job.
I'm just going to have my job, playing football, and still living down there. So it's just a one-year course, basically. Pass all that, then it's just a job for 3 more years.
After graduation from the apprenticeship school, Alvin wants to help build ships and submarines. And after everything that he's already overcome, working in the Navy Yard one day is going to be as easy as throwing a football.
Not just in Crossland High School. I'm saying pretty much across the other 22 high schools in Prince George's County. Probably not a whole lot of Alvin Jacksons.
We all have fun out here.
For Channels 96 and 38, I'm Grant Kittleson.
Thank you for that. Always a wonderful privilege and honor to see the great successes of our students every day. Thank you so much for that, particularly to our colleagues in media who set this up for us. Thanks, Max, for making that happen. We are now on to item 3.0, public comments on agenda items and non-agenda items. We have 7 registered speakers. I need to read this. Let's see. You have been registered to speak in a public comment forum where the Board of Education will listen to your comments. The board will not address your comments. All registered speakers will have 3 minutes to make their presentation. At the sound of the buzzer, speakers may complete that sentence only. Registered speakers may not relinquish any part of their speaking time to another registered or unregistered individual. Speakers may not address individuals or issues with profanity or in derogatory terms. You will be warned once. If you continue, your comments will be terminated and you may be asked to leave the meeting. Speakers are encouraged to use titles rather than names. For example, principal, superintendent, assistant superintendent, etc. Please leave a copy of your statement in the file box located next to the microphone. Your adherence to these guidelines will enable the public participation process to move smoothly. So we will start. I'll take a quick point of personal privilege, if I may, because I'm excited about this part of the agenda. Why? Folks may ask. I was scheduled tonight before this illustrious assignment to actually be teaching a course at the University of Maryland. I have the honor and the privilege to teach at the University of Maryland's graduate certification program. It's a special one-year graduate program where students spend a year in residence in the classrooms of real teachers in real schools. Many of them here, probably about half of the internships take place right here in schools in Prince George's County. And I teach a course called Teaching as a Profession, which is the last course the students take before they graduate. So the students in my class are right now applying for jobs, many right here in Prince George's County. So when you hear them speak tonight, be sure to scoop them right up. So anyway, all that to say, we talk about issues of teacher leadership all the time. So since I couldn't do class tonight, some of my students have decided to come and give us some wisdom from a new teacher's perspective about what it is that we need to hear from leadership from the voice of teachers. So our first speaker is Mr. Jeremy Schwartz. Come on up, Jeremy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and citizens of Prince George's County. I speak today on behalf of myself and several of my colleagues. We are completing year-long teaching internships as part of the University of Maryland's Master's in Certification program. Over the past 10 months, we've been extended support both broad and deep. Broad, our advisors and guides included university supervisors and mentors, Maryland professors, individual teacher mentors, other teachers at our schools, department resource teachers, school administrators, and each other. Deep. Our engagement with each source of support has been regular and frequent. Our topics have ranged from the theoretical to the immediately practical. We have been students and colleagues, followers and leaders, implementers and innovators. We have been prepared to serve our students to the greatest extent our advisors could facilitate. Yet there is one thing for which this support cannot help us prepare: its absence. As first-year teachers, we will experience a new range of demands on our time, restricting our opportunities to observe and discuss best practices with newfound colleagues. We will experience a new society at once as peer and probationary junior member, necessitating our own decisions regarding those from whom we seek advice. We will experience evaluations with new and often more rigid components, deviating from our familiar focus on performance assessments modeled on national board certification. We will experience likely infrequent or fragmented observation models, at odds with the regular guidance of this past year. We will experience a shift from engaging class discussions and lesson workshops to primarily assessment-oriented professional learning community sessions. This is the nature of life. It's time to leave the nest, and though the world may be scary, it's also exciting. But too many of us won't make it to our second year of teaching. Please, don't let us fall through the cracks. Linda Darling-Hammond and others have advocated for an overhaul of teacher evaluation to realign it with the goal of continuous improvement. Please don't let professional development turn into a code phrase for let's discuss test scores, or worse, just a soundbite. Please don't let us fail our students by failing to be lifelong students ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marty Castanaki.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marty Castanaki, and I'm here with colleagues from the University of Maryland, just as Mr. Schwartz was, and we're from the Program of Education. We address you as new teachers about the alarming dropout rates of Latino and Latina students. I want to share an anecdote with you from one of our pre-service teacher intern experiences this year. Y was a senior this year who, while in high school for 6 years, has aged out of the system. She is 21 now, has not been diagnosed with a learning disability, and will be filed under non-completion. She didn't pass any of her HSAs. She did, however, complete all of her academic validation projects. She had only one class left to complete, but needed 102% in that particular math class. Many caring teachers and administrators intervened with the math teacher to try to ensure Y's completion, to no avail. She continued to take the HSAs into the fall of her senior year, but eventually stopped coming to school. She worked part-time through high school and must now work full-time, which precludes her from taking summer or night school. Her situation has caused her to be severely depressed. She is but one example of many students we taught this year. We wonder why, with all the support the student received in her final year, why her difficulties and challenges weren't recognized earlier and support offered much, much earlier. In PG County Public Schools' Bridge to Excellence Master Plan, it states, PG CPS is committed to preparing all students to graduate career or workforce ready. Do I hear an echo? Where is that commitment? While dropout rates for other groups declined this year, this group of Latino and Latina English language learners is 3 to 4 times higher, a dropout rate higher than that of other Asian and Black limited English proficiency students. The University of Maryland, with robust research resources, is just steps away from one of PG County's largest high schools. This afternoon, this group of ESOL teachers is weeks away from starting to teach in your county. As new teachers, we are committed to relentlessly pursuing the dramatic decrease in dropout rates, not only for Latino and Latina students, but for all students in the near future. We recognize the hard work that went into the master plan and hope that you will ensure your commitment to this decrease in dropout rates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Rachel Gordon.
Hello, everybody. I'm another graduate student at the University of Maryland in the College of Education, and I'm here representing a group of Maryland education students who interned in PG County this year. Now, as soon-to-be first-year teachers, one of the things that concerns many of us is professional development. We want opportunities to learn from other teachers in the building beyond our year of student teaching. And one of the ways Prince George's County has been trying to do this is by requiring schools to organize learning walks for teachers. However, many of us who interned in this county have noticed that the learning walks have some room for improvement, and we wanted to bring some of these issues to the table and to give our suggestions for improving the system. So one of the issues with learning walks is that they involve a big group of teachers and administrators entering classrooms all at once, which can be very distracting for students and disruptive to lessons. Another issue is that even though teachers are told in advance what the observers will be looking for, the observers come through the room for only 5 to 10 minutes, and it's difficult to coordinate the lesson so that the observers see what they're looking for during that short 5 to 10 minute window when they're in the room. So we have a few suggestions for improving the learning walks. One is that in order to mitigate the disruption that the learning walks cause to students, and to make the observations more meaningful for those observing, we think that smaller groups of teachers, perhaps 2 to 3 teachers, should observe the class for the entire lesson so that they can see how the lessons progress from start to finish and can pick up multiple strategies that they may want to try themselves in their own classrooms. Learning walks should also be departmentalized, in our opinion. Instead of having a mixed group of teachers and administrators, we should have English teachers observing in English classrooms, math teachers observing in math classrooms, and so on. Not to mention that teachers should be the primary observers rather than administrators and department chairs, which is what it was like in the school that I interned in. And although there is certainly value to observing teachers from other disciplines, we think that having this system be departmentalized would simply maximize the benefits of the learning walks for the teachers. Finally, we think that it would be helpful for observers to discuss the lesson that they observed with the teacher that they observed, instead of just writing anonymous feedback that the teacher would then receive a couple of weeks later. Overall, we think that the learning walks have the potential to be an important part of professional development, but they need to be done right, and we hope that the board will consider our suggestions, as well as considering what other systems schools can put in place to help teachers, especially new teachers like me and my colleagues, learn from other teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Our next speaker is Erica Bennett. Is Erica Bennett here? Okay, then we will move on to our next speaker, who is Donna Behe.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the school board. My name is Donna Behe, and I've been a school counselor in Prince George's County now for 16 years. I currently work at Greenbelt Elementary, and I come to you today out of genuine concern for the students in our schools, many of whom will have no counseling program or services next year. Due to budget constraints, several schools have chosen not to fund the school counselor position, and many more, mine included, have cut us back to part-time. This denies access to mental and social health services to thousands of our children. Many of these students have 504 plans that we as counselors are required and trained to manage. Indeed, they are part of my performance evaluation, actually. Many of these students have counseling services on their IEPs. I had 2 this year at my school. Who is going to meet their needs in accordance with the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act? The Maryland State Department of Education mandates that every public school in Maryland have on staff a certified professional school counselor in accordance with COMAR 13A 050502. According to COMAR, the program must address 3 goals: 1, personal and academic growth; 2, educational and career decision-making; and 3, social-emotional growth. Now, COMAR doesn't discuss ratio of counselor to schools, but MSDE mandates elementary schools have 1, middle and high schools have 2 to 5, depending on the size of the school. Now, some schools argue they can meet these needs using other staff members, and I concede that that might be possible with goals 1 and 2. But only school counselors are trained in meeting students' social and emotional growth. We cannot only focus on academics. Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs impacts many students in our county. Our school system wants to make our students college and career ready. Many of these children need social skills training. If you can't get along with all types of coworkers or manage a difficult boss, you're not going to keep a job, much less be successful in one. This is what I do on a regular basis in my classrooms, as you will hear from the gentleman who precedes me. I understand the philosophy of school-based budgeting, but with the stringent academic demands and the bare-bones funding our schools are dealt, we are asking principals to rob Peter to pay Paul. Please relock our school counselor position. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Behe. Our next speaker is Nicholas Moore.
Good evening, Superintendent and members of the school board. My name is Nicholas Moore, and my son and daughter are students at Greenbelt Elementary School. I want to speak to you tonight about the valuable and indispensable work that Ms. Behe does for our school. On a regular basis, Ms. Behe visits my son's class to teach social problem-solving skills, anger and bully management, and conflict resolution. Caleb, my son, brought one of her lessons home to teach our family. Her 5 debug steps are taped to our refrigerator. These steps give kids strategies for dealing with a person who is bothering them. We try to apply them at home as well. My son loves the school store. This is part of the PBIS program that Ms. Behe coaches and oversees. Students who follow school expectations receive tickets, and they can use them to buy tempting items once a week in the store. Classes can also earn points for extra recess. Since this program started 5 years ago, Greenbelt suspension and discipline referrals have been cut by a whopping 72%. Without Ms. Behe's management of this labor-intensive program, the school would not have it. Due to budget cuts and severe staffing reductions, there is no one left who can do this. There are students in the school, as there are in every school, who have moderate to severe emotional and behavioral issues that affect other children. Ms. Behe checks in on them at the start of each day to coach, encourage, and remind them of their daily behavioral goals. The reason I feel comfortable sending my children to Greenbelt Elementary School is that the teachers have the support of a qualified, full-time counselor who can work closely with these children. I fear that if Ms. Behe's position is cut or reduced to part-time, the teachers will have to decide between offering instruction or maintaining safety and discipline. Ms. Behe also does vital work with our students to prepare them for college. This alone is a reason to keep the position full-time, but that's another topic for another day. Most importantly, Ms. Behe keeps students safe by teaching them interpersonal and social skills, by running the PBIS program, and by providing support to the students with behavioral problems. I am asking you, Superintendent, and the members of the board to lock the school counselor position for all schools all schools in Prince George's County. I know times are tough financially, but only with a full-time counselor can schools meet their first obligation to keep kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Our next speaker is David Kahn.
Well, welcome to the Baker Takeover Part 2. 11 years ago, our current county executive took away our right to vote for school board, and we were given an all-appointed board that hired 3 different superintendents in the space of its 4.5-year existence, one of whom turned out to be a crook. This time around, we get to vote for school board. That's great. However, our elected representatives, as well as our newly appointed representatives, will have almost no power over our school system. Most of the school board's power has been transferred to the yet-to-be-named superintendent. That being said, we're here. So I'd like to address my remarks to our new members. First of all, welcome. Welcome, welcome. I wish you every success. I am very hopeful that you will do a great job. I see no reason why you wouldn't. Of course, it's not going to matter a whole heck of a lot, but I don't think your presence here will hurt our students. I don't think it will help our students particularly. I'm concerned about how you got here, very obviously. And I have a question for you and an observation. The question is, you all have very impressive credentials. Where were you last November and 2 Novembers prior when we had elections for the school board? If you're so dedicated to our students and to their success, why didn't you put yourself forward and run for school board as our elected members did? The observation that flows from that is where your loyalty lies. I'm sure you'll be working for the best you can for our students. But the other members, they're accountable to the electorate, to thousands of people in their respective districts. I know that they are accountable to the parents and through the parents to the students. But you all don't work for me. They do. You don't. You work for the people who appointed you. In the case of 3 of you, you work for Rashern Baker. The 4th member, Mr. Valentine, works for the county council. You're not accountable to the people. And it's going to be very difficult, and I hope this will change as time goes by, to trust you, even though I hope that you succeed. But it's a difficult situation, and I respect the fact that it's difficult for you as well, because you want to work what's good for the children and the taxpayer, but you know who brought you to the dance, and you are accountable to Mr. Baker or to the county council. I hope this can be resolved over time, and I hope you'll work for greater transparency in our school board deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kahn. I want to just check and see if Erica Bennett has come in the room. Is Erica Bennett here? Okay, well, that concludes our list of public comments for the evening. Agenda item 4.0, legislative agenda. There are no legislative agenda items this evening. Agenda item 5.0, discussion items. There are no discussion items this evening, so we move to agenda item 6.0, consent agenda. I will now yield the floor to Dr. Crawley for the introduction of consent agenda items number 6.1 through 6.6. Dr. Crawley.
Thank you, Board Chair. Items 6.1 to items 6.6 are before the Board for approval of the following: Forensics 1 and 2, Science Textbooks, Elementary Reading, Language Arts, Fundamentals, Fiscal Year 2013 Grant Reporting, and Educational Specifications for Duval, Gwynn Park, and Bladensburg High School as a part of our secondary school reform.
Yes, Ms. Beck.
I'd like to have items 6.1 and 6.3 pulled for questions.
Items, the request is items 6.1 and 6.3 removed for questions.
Just for questions, then it can go back.
Okay.
Second.
That does not need a second. So they will be pulled for questions.
Okay.
All right. How about we handle that now?
Okay. Sounds good. 6.1, Forensics 1 and Forensics 2. Why does the Board Action Summary reflect SSR funding for the budget implications? I know that's where the funding comes from, but I was expecting to see a dollar amount. Usually budget implications has a dollar amount.
I'll have to get you that dollar amount.
Okay. 6.3, grant reporting. On page 10, the National Science Foundation's grant, we've heard about that before, and it indicates pending on the $3 million grant, but it's providing for summer enrichment. So what is the status on getting that grant? How long is pending?
We can get you an answer for that.
Okay.
I'll provide that to you.
So that's the National Science Foundation grant, page 10. Thank you. I'd like to move approval of items 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and 6.6.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. I have on the speaking agenda Ms. Fellows.
Yes.
Is this a question
It was a
about
question
one of the
agenda
items?
Yes.
That came up?
Yes. The 6.02, it's just a process question I had. Okay?
Okay.
Because I wanted to ask in reference to the curriculum or the elementary reading English language arts, how much involvement do we have from parents around these selections for these, and what kind of input do they get so that they're familiar with what we are adopting?
There's an administrative procedure that governs how we select textbooks, and there's a committee that reviews it, and there's always parent representation on this committee.
Okay. Is there any kind of report that we get so that we can see what their views are?
There's actually a one-page report from the committee before they approve a textbook, and we can certainly get you a copy of that.
And this committee consists of parents and?
Mostly folks from CNI.
Okay. And how are parents selected? What is that process?
That's a good question. I think there's a parent nomination, but I'll check on that.
Okay, and you said most of them are from CNI?
Correct.
Is there any percentage of how many parents are on that, or is that random? Are you going to get that information?
I'll get that for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, approval of items 6.1 through 6.6 on the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Parker, please call the roll.
On the motion, Dr. Anderson?
Abstain.
Ms. Beck?
Aye.
Ms. Epps?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Fellows?
Abstain.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
Aye.
Dr. Kaufman?
Aye.
Mr. Valentine?
Abstain.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Dr. Eubanks?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you, colleagues. We now move to budget item 7.0. I have a request to speak from Ms. Beck.
I'd like item 7.2 pulled for questions.
Item 7.2, pull for questions. I have a request to speak from Ms. Epps.
Thank you, Dr. Eubanks. Okay, so
Are you pulling a particular item?
I thought we were questioning 7.2.
Okay, I'm just making sure there are no additional, before we move into that. Let me just.
Oh.
So item 7.2 is pull for questions. Are there any other items to be pulled for questions? No? Okay, Ms. Epps, please.
Thank you. So had an opportunity to review the contract, and it was it's very extensive. I found several parts of it to be just quite odd. I'm sorry. A lot of the language is, as I understand it, not form to the kinds of contracts that we're looking to, and there are several areas that I'm concerned about. So in no particular order, I'll just start with, first and foremost, the budget implications. My first question is College Park Academy, in addition to the $2.4 million, which we're looking to consent to this evening, was there additional funding provided from the state or any kind of supplemental funding that was provided to this school? And if so, it's not indicated in terms of kind of the financials of, that are associated with the contract.
Good evening. What you see reflected on the board action summary is solely the per pupil allocation. So what we normally put there is the budget implications associated with the per pupil allocation that each charter school gets and what their expected numbers are. So it doesn't reflect any other dollar amounts or any other external funds.
So are you aware of any additional funding that
I'm
the
not.
school's going to be getting? Okay, thank you.
And so that funding formula that was applied to College Park is consistent with what we've done with the other charter schools, and in this case, as part of that initiative at College Park, they are focusing on 6th and 7th grade for the first year. There are a total of, I believe, 300 students that are targeted.
Okay. I also had a question about the lottery process. It mentions that the school is going to be using or I guess it's already used it, the lottery process for the first year of operation, and then after that will not be using the school system's lottery process?
So this year, we allowed the charter school to manage their own lottery. We sent our charter school liaison to oversee the lottery, but they did their own lottery this year.
Is that consistent with the other charters?
This is consistent with the other charters. There's an administrative procedure that was approved, I believe, in August of 2012 that would permit each charter school to conduct its own lottery. And so we've had some discussion about that process as we've looked at sort of across the district, the implementation of the lottery process within our charter schools.
So will the charter schools lottery be consistent with the administrative procedure moving forward?
I think that that is a decision that we would have to discuss in terms of any revision of the administrative procedure.
So there's a separate administrative procedure that just governs charter school lotteries. And so, to the best of my knowledge, they adhere to all the requirements associated with that lottery. I think there were a couple of questions that came up the day of the lottery that Ms. White was able to address while she was there. But it varies, so different charter schools have done different things. As what I think this will be like the 7th charter school. So Imagine Andrews did their own lottery. CMIT that opened up in Laurel, for the first year they asked us to do their lottery, and they'll do all their subsequent lotteries. Morningside Elementary did their own lottery. So it's something that is a measure of autonomy that we will let them do it if they want to do it, and if they ask us to do it, we'll do it for them.
Thank you.
I have Ms. Beck and then Mr. Valentine.
So until last year, we were doing all the lotteries for the charters, right? No.
I could say that for Excel, when they opened up initially, we did their lottery. For Turning Point, we did their lottery. But this was under the former superintendent's administration, that there were concerns from some of the charters about the way the process went. We were using the exact same process that we use for specialty schools for their lotteries, and they wanted to have a little bit more information as the process was moving forward. And so they came in, we met with them, they made a request that they be able to handle their own lotteries. And so we started that process of allowing them, if that was their choice, to do their own lotteries. And again, we send our charter school liaison out, and she's usually there the day of when they administer their lottery.
Is that how other charters in the state run?
In Baltimore City, the charters do all their own lotteries, every single one of them.
Okay, so today at 10:55, we received an email that gave us, for College Park Academy, the number of applications, the number of placements, the number of waits, declines, and others. And we received that by board district and outside, so that would be the homeschool or the children who are coming from outside of our district, currently attending outside. Let me give my question first, okay? So when I looked at District 0, which I'm going to assume is children who are not attending PGCPS currently, okay, there were 80 applications and 52 acceptances or placements. Right. So, so of the 291 students being placed at College Park Academy, 18% of them are coming from a no-district environment.
It appears that way at this time.
Okay. And so 18% are coming from a no-district relationship, and not one student in District 7 is getting into College Park Academy. Not one. So there's 52 coming from outside of our system and not one from District 7. There are 6 coming from District 8. Mm-hmm. There are 14 coming from District 9. Okay, so I'm going to say that this perpetuates the ugly stepsister situation that the South County is already feeling. We're not getting into the new programs labeled vigorous programs. And I'm going to say part of that is because of distance. But my concern is that, and I know I shouldn't be concerned that this rigorous program is bringing children who are currently in a no-district environment into the district. That's what we want. But my concern is when we have children in District 7 who are not getting into this environment. There were 80 no district applications, and 52 made it into the school. So that's a 65% acceptance rate. That bothers me. I'd like to know, I mean, we just got this at 10:55, and I'm sitting here trying to crunch this data into an Excel spreadsheet because it just looked wrong. I mean, that's the other problem. If we're getting data, we should get it in a format that tells us something, rather than this district had this many applications, this many acceptances, because that means we're going to have to put it into something that tells us the story of the applications, which is what I just did. But it does concern me, and I'd like to know if other charters saw 20% of their school composed of no district children.
Can I respond to that? There were only 2 schools that had an applicant that wasn't accepted in the College Park. And Glen Ridge had 1 student who applied and was not accepted, and James Harrison had 1 student who was not accepted. Every other school on the list that had applicants had at least 1 student apply. When I looked at the distribution, when you talk about no district, you're talking about kids who came out of non-publics or out of homeschool environments. And what I did was I crossed it over CMITs, and I found it very, very similar distribution. And you're right, it's very much driven by geography. So CMIT, very heavy in the Northwest. College Park Academy, very heavy in the Northwest. But what was surprising to me is there were still kids from Baden and Akakeek who were applied and were accepted into College Park Academy and in CMIT. So we are, even though these schools are located in the Northwest, they're still drawing kids from the entire district. But they don't, they don't offer transportation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's part of, I mean, we don't have these programs in South County, and that is a huge, huge equity issue.
But you will. So we'll
have CMIT.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
All right. I have
Next.
I have questions. I can come back, Ms. Beck.
Was the timer on? Okay. Oh, it did. Okay.
I have Mr. Valentine, Ms. Waller, Ms. Eubanks, and myself, and Ms. Jacobs, and then round 2.
I have a question for Ms. White, actually, as you return to your seat. It's a very direct question. You are the one who was sent to oversee the lottery process. Can you say that this process was free and fair, absent any prejudice of students by farm, special education, or by geography?
Ms. White, would you please introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm Loretta White, Khalid, the liaison and executive officer for Charter and Contract School Development. First of all, I'd like to welcome, thank you, Ms. Jacob, and welcome the board members, the new board members. Mr. Valentine, your question is, do I feel like was the lottery run with fidelity? I have no question, after seeing the distribution of districts and how the lottery was run, I really have no question in terms of the fidelity in which it was run. I would want to wonder if the marketing would have increased the opportunities for youngsters in the Southern County. But we have to keep in mind that transportation is an issue, and it's not a benefit that we provide to the charter schools. So when a parent makes that decision to enroll in a charter school, they are also making a decision to do the transportation as well. But with the data, and not having the opportunity to see the data that was being collected, and that's one of the challenges we have. The information goes directly to the charter schools. Parents have an option to enroll their youngster in the lotteries for each and every charter school. I can't stand here and say that, yes, every child, and what was the mechanism to ensure that every child was there. This one of the flexibilities and the autonomies and the trust that we give to the charter schools. We have no reason to believe that it wasn't handled fairly.
For farm and special education students as well?
Well, here's the thing. We can't ask those questions on the application. You won't know farm, you won't know special education, you won't know ESOL until after the fact, until the youngsters have actually been selected and you have the student numbers. As College Park sit here today, as far as I know, they don't know who their farm students are, who their special education students are, except for that there was one student that stood out on that list that came from Kennedy Krieger. That's an obvious. But all in all, they don't have the sensitive demographic information at this point.
Can I ask my question another way then? Was there bias towards students who would have come from areas where there were not a high number of farm or special education students?
Not to my knowledge. Okay. I can say that they did market in a certain area, but not necessarily. Most of their marketing was in an area where they knew parents could get there.
So, but your answer to this first question, to the best of your knowledge, there was the lottery process was done with fidelity to the best of your knowledge.
To the best of my knowledge.
Thank you. You all set? Ms. Waller.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have, in light of our school-based budgeting, in school District 3, at several of my schools, I note that we have a large number of students that will be leaving those schools going to the academy. So my question is, at what point and how will we notify that principal and make the recommended class size adjustments for the loss of these students?
In actuality, the schools will not lose the students until the parent actually completes the enrollment and registration process. As of now, they are on a list who have been selected to be placed in the school. The next step will be that those parents would have to actually go to the facility, College Park Academy, and enroll the youngster. And once that parent does that, then pupil accounting and school boundaries will roll that youngster into the new school. And we don't know that until the parents actually complete the registration process.
Now, on the form that the table that was sent to us is listing Y and N, I'm assuming for farms. Where did that information come from? I thought you said that we didn't know that information.
They don't know that. You know that.
Oh, we know
This is our internal information.
This is internal.
From our system.
And see, as a part of the application process, they are forbidden from asking those questions for the fact that we don't want any exclusionary nuances going on.
Okay, the other question, I think that there was some discussion. Will their facility be completely ready for occupancy by the time that our schools are supposed to open?
I'm hearing that it will be open. I do know that they are over there every day provisioning the facility to meet the codes and the specs. They've already met with the county code enforcement officers. They've been given a checklist of things that need to be resolved before they can get the use and occupancy agreement. And our timeline says that it has to be received 30 days before school opens.
So we have a couple of more weeks than the middle of July that we should know for sure if the academy will open on, I believe, August the 17th is when school starts
When
this year.
school starts. They are expected to be open.
Okay, so
day one.
it's going to be on schedule then. Okay, I was just curious about that. Thank you so much.
So, Ms. Waller, just a couple of comments. Certainly, we'll continue to monitor this as in terms of the impact of enrollment of students, and one of the things that we do as a part of student-based budgeting is the ongoing communication with principals to look at their numbers, and we've talked about classroom balancing that we're doing now and into the fall as we look at school starting, so we'll be making those adjustments and working very carefully with principals.
And Dr. Crawley, if I could add that when we looked at where the schools the kids were coming from, those were the elementary schools they attended. These kids are entering 6th and 7th grade, so it's those schools we're losing those kids anyway as they've articulated up to the middle school. What you don't see is the middle school they would have attended, because that's not how we're tracking the data. So for example, there's a whole bunch of kids from Berwyn Heights, but those were the kids leaving Berwyn Heights to go to middle school anyway. So there'll be virtually no impact on any of the elementary schools that you see on the list.
That's a good
because they don't have elementary grades.
Ms. Eubanks.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One question I would address to page 12, on number 10, under student fees and charges. I'm really having a little heartburn with the wording of this. I'm going to read it as it's listed here. A charter school may not charge tuition to students attending its school. Other fees charged to students by the charter school, including but not limited to supply and activity fees, shall be placed in a separate account and expended for the purposes for which they were collected. Can someone explain that to me, please?
So it could be student activities fees, the science fee, whatever school-based fees they are, they're required to put them in a school-based activity fund, and it's subject to audit by internal audit. So this provision is in place for all of our existing charter schools and most of our schools, in fact. So anytime.
Is it worded like this as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Another question I know because we ran into an issue before where we had to close a charter school because they weren't achieving like we had hoped. Is that also listed here? Because I didn't see it. I might have overlooked it. But
it specifies terms of revocation.
Yes.
So you would still have the ability to put a school that wasn't successful on probation.
Okay.
If you wanted to put them on probation and give them steps that they had to meet in order to be removed from probation. And again, it has provisions in here. If the same situation were to occur as what occurred at the previous school, you would be able to do the same thing, which is to step in and revocate the charter.
Okay, and lastly, in reference to marketing or we can use another word, am I correct in remembering that the Academy did not want us to put the information about the school on our website where we put our other specialty programs? Because I think in light of what others have said, we would get more from the rest of the county if it had been put on our system.
I know that they made a decision, I think it was, and Ms. White could confirm this for me, but I know that they made a decision not to participate in the fair that we hold for specialty schools. But they weren't required to do that. It was an option if they wanted to do it. But I believe that Communications did send an email out to our listserv advising people that their lottery was open.
Yeah, but the Academy did. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so my question is, help those of us who haven't been around for a while, where are we in the approval process and development of the College Park Academy? My understanding is that there's been a series of approvals that have been before the board. Can you explain kind of where we are in this approval process?
Yes, sir. So each year we put out our RFA, request for applications for folks who are interested in opening up a charter school. Ms. White does a really good job of onboarding, and she holds sessions with key staff members prior to the application process so that interested applicants can have assistance with putting together their application. Once their application is approved, we have 120 days to review and for the board to take action on that application. This school applied for a charter. They went through the application process. We interviewed their governing board members. We had 2 interviews with them, and the recommendation to the superintendent and to the Board of Education was to approve the application. The board did approve the application last year. This is simply approval of the charter agreement, the contract between the Board of Education and the charter.
Thank you. One other question. I know that there are folks here from the Academy and from the University of Maryland, and there is an active partnership. Can you talk about what the partnership is between the University of Maryland explicitly and the College Park Academy?
Dr. Weissman is here. If you want her to come up, she can be more specific.
Yes, please. I'd appreciate that.
Yes, the University of Maryland is proud to be a partner with College Park Academy, and also a collaborative group called the College Park University Public Partnership. I just know the acronym, and I'm having trouble putting that all together. And so the university has the vision of not only being involved with the College of Education, where I'm the dean, but also being involved with the entire campus and having our students be active in the education of the students at the College Park Academy by tutoring, mentoring, offering after-school programs for the students at the school, and also out of my college doing internships for future teachers, as well as other types of activities. We just had a grant approved where some of our faculty will be working with the Smithsonian to integrate a project that they've asked us to collaborate with. They heard about the College Park Academy and came to the college and asked to be a part of that partnership. So we expect that the partnership between the campus and the College Park Academy will involve the research, will involve activities for our students, will provide opportunities for the students at College Park to come to the campus. And most importantly, if you've read the proposal, you realize that College Park Academy will become a middle college location. In other words, there will be, for those students who qualify, courses offered from the College Park campus that can be used not only for high school credit, but for also acquiring university credit while students are completing their high school. It's a common type of program that you now have for Prince George's Community College. So those are some of the ways that the partnership between the campus and the school are unfolding. We're still having a lot of discussions on campus about how that might be, but it's a big endeavor, a big important goal of President Wallace Lowe, who believes that the campus should be more involved in Prince George's County educational enriching Prince George's educational system. So those are some of the ways. I don't know if you have more questions or not. I'll be glad to answer specifics.
Thank you. I think I'm all set. Thank you. Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Dr. Eubanks. My question is, just to be clear, that when we approved the College Park Academy application last year, at that time the board, was very interested in the partnership. My questions are legal-based, having been down the road of charter schools and having to have the board in a position where we've had to look at revocation. Some of my questions are, and I'll just try to go through them, but they kind of go throughout the document from a legal perspective. So my questions sort of start with, on page 4, there's a mention of donations and reporting gifts and donations, which is on page 4, section D. There used to be a sentence, if I'm not mistaken, that there couldn't be gifts in excess of $10,000. I'm wondering if that is a change, and if so, what brought that about? On page 5, there's a section C, compensation. Members of the governing board of the charter school will receive no compensation other than reimbursement of actual expenses incurred while fulfilling their duties as a member of the governing board. What does that mean? What are the parameters specifically to to the actual expenses, and how are those expenses paid? Is it out of that budget? On page 8, My question, actually, I think I just need explanation as to what, how is Section C, for example, specifically annual operating budget allocation, addresses special education maintenance of effort. What does that mean? And the lease purchase process, that's actually, if I'm not mistaken, those are new in the contract. And again, because we specifically had a charter school by which we had some directly special education issues, I'd like to know exactly why that language was put in and what the meaning of that is. On page 10.
I just
Do you want to pause and let me answer a few of those questions, or do you want to?
I just want to make sure you all are keeping track. If she wants to go through and get them all out, that's her prerogative. I just want to make sure you guys got it so far.
Okay.
You want them to pause? You want to keep going? Okay.
Okay. Because I don't want to lose my thought. On page 10, the discretionary disbursement section E, if you can also explain, I guess, the process for that and provisions whereby discretionary disbursements will occur. I'm going to jump to page, I think somebody else may have asked another question, so I'm going to jump to a different page. Page 12. This was just a question. I thought when our charter schools open, you know, I've been here since I think the approval of all 7. Did we not put in, or is there not, will there be a new process for before and after care so that parents know whether or not they have that option available under the student fees section? And on page 15, this is just a note. We usually have the facility location in the contract. Unless I missed it, I'm sorry. And then I may have missed it also in the attachment in terms of the appendix A and B. I may not have seen the appendix because I didn't see those. I'm not sure if they're in there, and I may have missed them. I'm just noticing that they reference the attachments, but they're not in the information that I received. And then on, you know, it's really just a question about the negotiated agreement on page. I'm just not wanting us to be in a situation where we have any labor issues relative to the employees that's noted. I'm trying to figure out where I put the page now. It basically says that the charter schools will determine the employee, I think it's, I want to say 24. Let me see, maybe it was 24. So it talks about the negotiated agreement, but no, I'm sorry, because I don't want my time to run out. The page that I'm looking for, I'll mention it and then I'll find it for you, but essentially it talks about the charter schools, it's on page 21, sorry, teachers and staff. I wanted to do a fact check and a negotiated agreement check on the language specific to PGCPS employees, which says the charter school will recruit and recommend for hiring of all employees, which is not necessarily a problem, but want to make sure that that's part of the negotiated agreement. And then very quickly, there are others, but since my time ran out, on page 28, under section B, convictions, it specifically says that any such criminal background checks produce evidence of a criminal conviction in the background of any such personnel of the charter school. But the charter school will make a determination whether or not to hire the individual with the understanding that it is the school board's preference that they do not hire the individual. If that kind of language is going to be in there, there also needs to be a clause that holds the school board harmless if there's going to be a hiring of individuals with criminal convictions with the understanding that the board would not hire that person. And then I'll do round 2. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, for the most part, Ms. Jacobs, this charter agreement is almost identical to the CMIT's charter agreement, for instance. So let me start at the top and go through the items that you've pointed out. So first of all, with respect to gifts and donations, they are required to comply with AP, I think it's 3150, which basically says that if they get donations over a certain amount, it has to come back to the Board of Education for approval. So if the school gets a significant donation, which so far the charter schools that have gotten major donations were usually federal grants, Race to the Top or MSDE funds, and those funds had to come back and run through the school system and be dispersed to the school in any event. With respect to governing board members' expenses, I think that was the next one. The governing board is typically an unpaid governing board. To the extent that they may be reimbursed for expenses, it could be for mileage reimbursement or something like that. And but basically, they all have to get an external audit. Their auditors they submit their final audit to us, and we give it to our internal auditors for review as well. So, to my knowledge, we haven't had an issue with respect to that.
You're saying that's the current process, but it's not codified?
It is in here that they have to get an audit done. It is in the contract that an audit has to be completed.
An audit and expenses are different.
Okay.
Okay.
The language that you mentioned with regard to the annual operating, that language that you see there, it was put in because there were questions from the charter schools about how we arrive at our allocation. So what you see in that language there is basically what we pull out and don't include when we develop the per pupil allocation for the charter schools. So the reason that's taken straight out of the budget book. So the charter schools had several questions in terms of how we arrive at the per pupil allocation. So that's why you see things like lease purchase, special ed. Special ed is backed out of the per pupil allocation because we typically provide those services in accordance with the IEP. So in some school districts, special ed is included in the per pupil allocation, and the charter school is responsible for buying those services and providing those services. We do it just the opposite here, and we back out special education out of the per pupil allocation, and that's why you see that language in there in terms of what the annual expense is, what the annual allocation is for the charter school in that language. As far as I know, this school isn't going to provide before and after care, but for the charter schools that do provide before and after care, that language was put in to specify that they're not required to use the school system's before and after care program. So many of the charter schools, and like I said, this language is in there for all of our charter agreements. So many of the charter schools that currently have a before and after care program, they're contracting out. And so they're not using the school system's before and after care program. And so that was one of the autonomies that we provided to the charters. If you didn't get Appendix A and B, I apologize, and I'll provide those to you. In terms of the language with respect to negotiated agreements, that's put in to specify, and this is a requirement under state law, that all of the employees of the charter school are PGCPS employees. So therefore, all of their teachers are a member of PGCEA, and they're paid according to the teachers union scale. That's the same for principals, the secretary. Every employee of the school has the same protections afforded to them under the negotiated agreement as if they worked at any of our other public schools. I think there was a question also about the discretionary disbursement. So the way that the charter schools are funded right now, because their employees are our employees and we're responsible for ensuring that they get a paycheck every 2 weeks, what budget does is they basically hold back the personnel. So let's say if the school is entitled to get $2.4 million, if $1 million of it is personnel costs, that's pulled out of their per pupil allocation, and then they get quarterly disbursements of what we deem discretionary funds, and that's typically what they use to pay their lease, to pay their utilities, to buy their books, desk, whatever other materials they need for their school. It's paid out of that discretionary disbursement. It used to be a time when we first started this process of opening charter schools, when we required the charter schools, everything ran through Prince George's County Public Schools. We never really made a disbursement. They had to use Oracle and purchase their materials, through our school system, and that it slowed the process down for them in many instances, and they asked for the autonomy. And so we looked at how other districts were doing it. Baltimore City was doing it this way, and so the recommendation, it's been like this for several years now, was that they receive their discretionary disbursement and quarterly payments. And so that's what I had in my notes.
I think I have Ms. Epps still in round one. Ms. Epps? Are you on round two? All right. So we'll start with round two. I have Ms. Epps and Ms. Beck.
Okay. So, Ms. Battle, one of the things that you said is that the employees are Prince George's County Public School employees, and several places in the document, there's language where it talks about Prince George's County Public School employees, and then in other parts of the document it talks about school board employees. And so I wanted to know if that is that phrasing is supposed to be used interchangeably, or if we're talking about, because the school board itself doesn't really have employees except for those in the board office. So I just kind of wanted to understand that. The other thing on page 7, there was a mention about the school reporting out on its achievement, but at the top, it actually starts on page 6 about achievement levels, but then at the bottom of the paragraph it says, however, failure to meet AMO objectives alone during the first year of the charter school's operation shall not result in a finding by the school board that the charter school's academic achievement is substantially deficient. So this board, we've been talking about academic achievement. We've been talking about, and even on the website of College Park Academy, it talks about rigor. It's mentioned several times. So I'm curious as to how it is that, the school can talk about the fact that it's based around academic rigor, it's in partnership with University of Maryland, but is not open to or is exempt from any kind of finding in terms of its academic achievement if the students, for whatever reason, don't perform well, or even to take whatever the performance of the students would be after the first year. I think, that's particularly important. Further down in section 6 on page 7, it goes into a long process about charter schools receiving waivers from school system policies and procedures. Again and again, I heard mention that the reason why this is boilerplate is because much of the language is in compliance with school policies and procedures, and yet here is a full section stating that they can submit requests for waivers within 60 days of enactment, which is kind of ambiguous because, and then, so 60 days enactment and posting of new procedures on their website and 60 days from notification. Really? I just started talking. Okay. The school board will respond in 60 days. Give me one more minute. And finally, okay, then my last one is about criminal background checks. So on page 27 in section 15, section C, subsection C, it talks about agents, officers, and representatives being exempted from criminal background checks, and not having to get criminal background checks. And so I'm concerned about us opening a school under any circumstances in which anyone associated with the school will be exempted from criminal background checks. So those are my issues, at least in this section.
Okay. Anytime it refers here to school board employees, it means the employees of the school who are also, they get a Prince George's County Board of Education paycheck, basically. As far as AMO objectives are concerned, they have, the first year you have to establish a baseline. So you don't want to put a school on probation because the first year they don't make, well, in the past it was always AYP. I guess it's going to be something different in the future. But basically, you have to allow the school that first year that if they don't make AYP, that you won't necessarily step in and put them on probation or recommend revocation because they have to have a baseline. So, and again, this isn't language that was specifically created for this school. This is the same language that's in all of our charter agreements. So, for instance, we have a charter school that, as far as I know, has never made AYP, but we haven't stepped in because maybe the school climate was really good, the parents were really happy, and they made progress. So, with respect to waivers, the waiver language is placed in there because, again, a charter school is ideally should be something innovative and different, and there may be instances where they might want to do something different than what we do, and if that's the case, they have to submit that waiver request. So, for instance, the typical things that we may seek a waiver from from a charter school might be our uniform procedure. So, you know, right now with our current schools, if a school wants to have a mandatory uniform policy, they have to go through a process. So we've gotten, in the past, waiver requests from schools to say, as part of their original application, that they established from the beginning that they wanted to be a uniform school. So we didn't make them go through that survey vote process. So those are the type of waivers that we have seen. There have been times when schools have requested a waiver that we couldn't comply with. So there was one school, charter school that we've had where there are requirements under COMAR about the age for a bus and certification of a bus. And so we had a charter school in years past that wanted to seek a waiver of that process, but it wasn't our rule. It was a rule under COMAR, under MSDE. So the waiver had to actually be submitted to MSDE. So there are instances where a charter school may need a waiver from existing policies and procedures. Sometimes we may say yes, sometimes we may say no. It just depends on what it is. But we typically wouldn't waive any health and safety regulations, and we wouldn't waive any state assessments that were required. But like, for instance, if a charter school said that they didn't want to administer OLSAT, which is a test that we give to determine whether or not a child is tag identified. In the past, we have waived that and said that a charter school didn't have to do that. And if a parent wanted their kid to be tag identified, they could go to the tag office and have the test administered for that child to be tag identified. So those are the typical waiver requests that you might see. This charter school did not submit any waiver requests when they submitted their application.
Thank you. Yeah, there was the question regarding the convictions. Did you cover that?
I'm looking for that language.
All right.
Just a second. That's the language with regard to background checks. Okay, so there are instances, anyone who works at the school who is a school board employee undergoes the same criminal background check as any other school system employee. Sometimes the charter schools have someone who is working at the school who's not a school system employee. So in this case, with respect to this charter school, they have an external vendor who is going to be providing services to the school. They are using a vendor called Connections Academy who is providing the online courses. And so that is an example of a non-school board employee who will still be required to undergo a criminal background check. And this language basically says that the person will undergo the criminal background check at the charter school's expense so that the school system would not have to pay for it, and that they will go through our fingerprint office to conduct the background check and to provide that the charter school will pay for that service. So,
what page?
With regard to our employees, if we get what we affectionately refer to as a hit, where there's someone who has been convicted of a crime, HR makes an internal determination as to whether or not that person will be hired by the school system. So in this case, as it's not our employee, HR would not be making the determination whether or not that person would still get to work at the school. It would be the onus or the burden would be on the charter school to make that determination about whether or not that person still gets to work at the school.
Okay. I want to, that answered part of it, but I think what Ms. Epps is referring to is page 28C, that says the governing body has decided that it does not want to require all agents, officers, or representatives to have to comply with fingerprinting and criminal background checks? Is
Okay.
That's the specific question?
Right. So you may have an instance where you have a person who is a member of the governing board that never has any interaction with students at all. And so it may be in that instance that the governing board may decide that this person does not have to go through a criminal background check.
Thank you. And now I have in the queue Ms. Beck, Ms. Higgins, myself, and Ms. Waller, and Ms. Boston.
I'd like to follow up on where we are right now, where it says the governing board understands that it is the preference of the school board to be fingerprinted and successfully complete. It's not a preference, it's a policy. So is the governing board requesting a waiver from that policy? And this would be a health and safety waiver.
They have not requested a waiver of that policy.
Well, as it shows up in the contract, that language would in effect be a waiver of the policy. I would vote no on this if it was a waiver, but it's embedded in a contract. So if we vote yes on the contract, we're agreeing to a waiver of something that's not a preference, that's a policy. Okay, next. There was comment that the vision of this is that it will become a middle college environment. Our middle college has a percentage for farms. I believe it's 50%. 50% must be farms. So what is, of the students who were placed at College Park, what is the percentage of farms? I could add it up if I hadn't gotten it at 10:55 today, but only 2 of the non-district 80 applicants, only 2 of them were farms, according to your spreadsheet.
We don't have farms data on anybody who wasn't in our school before, so we're taking that off. 88 out of the 297 are farms, and that doesn't include the
Then how would they be coded on your spreadsheet as homeschooled Y for farms?
So if they were coming out of our district, we would know their farm status. 51 kids are placed from non-public. We have no idea whether they're farms or not. So out of the 297, take 51 off. So that's 246 kids. 88 of them we know were farms last year.
Okay, are you looking at the same
I'm looking
data
at
I'm looking at?
Don, I'm looking at my data, which I know is right.
Okay,
So-
well then I'm looking at wrong data.
Yeah.
Because it says on zero district, no district, that 2 are in the farms column.
I'm getting 88.
Okay, well, here's kind of my predicament. This is on the consent agenda. Clearly, some of us do not consent. I'm going to jump out on that. Where are we? Oh, so this is a clarifying question for the lawyer. What happens when we don't consent on something that's on the consent? I thought it was just me, but apparently it's not.
If I may, according to Board Policy 9360, when this item was pulled, it actually goes to the non-consent agenda and is discussed separately and voted on separately. So the board can take action on all the other items that weren't pulled as a group, as you did with the consent agenda, and vote on this particular item separately or take some other action as appropriate.
So if it goes to non-consent, then it goes to first reader.
Remember, we changed the policy
that's right.
to
We're
have a
having
separate non-consent agenda item, which is agenda item 11, so that the board could still take action on it after discussion. It's just a mechanism to allow you to have discussion where you normally would not as a consent agenda.
Right. Okay. So it would go to an area where it didn't go the first and second reader process.
Well, depending on what the motion is, you may ultimately
put it into first and second reader.
Put it into first and second reader, or bring it back the next meeting to address some of the board's concerns. It just depends on how the motion is made.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Higgins.
Yes. I have some contract questions as well, but first I want to say very clearly how what a gem this College Park Academy is, which is why the board a year ago approved the application. It's a wonderful partnership with the University of Maryland, our school system, and it really offers our children a wonderful opportunity. So in my mind, this has nothing to do with the quality of education that we can offer our children in the system. That said, I have listened to my colleagues at length. I think that a number of issues in regards to the contract do need attention and revision, and I had a couple of additional ones to on page 4. Number 2, the second to the last sentence. Nothing in this contract will prevent the governing board of the charter school from delegating day-to-day decision-making authority to the staff of the charter school. The way I read that is that the governing body sees its role as being involved in the day-to-day operation. And I, as a board member, have been trained that it's better if a governing body stay out of the day-to-day operation of an entity, and if all the staff want to say amen, that would be fine.
So anyway, I do think that that really is something that may need to have further attention. Ms. Eubanks brought up about the fees, and I understand apparently that's standard language. I really have a problem not having a cap on what the fees might be, and also not having a addressing the issue of what happens if children cannot pay. The third thing is, you know, I've heard a lot of people talk about the lottery and then the application process and whether or not it's properly advertised. I really think that the lottery, to just avoid any discussion about that whatsoever, that the lottery and the application process should come back to PGCPS, and then we don't have to spend a lot of conversation about that fairness issue. And then that we then have staff who have to say, well, we trust that they did it. I trust that they did it fairly, but it just, as a discussion that doesn't need warranty. And then the last thing that I really have is about the criminal background check. I understand that we could put language in here that Prince George's County Public Schools would not be held accountable, but these are our kids. These are a public school. It's a charter school. Under the charter, it needs to follow PGCPS policy, and I understand that if we have potential employees who may have in their youth committed some crime that gets quote-unquote a hit, that decision is made in terms of what kind and whether that person can still proceed. And I think those decisions should be made by HR, and again, not by the charter school. So I thank Dr. Wiseman, and I think Ms. Mitchell is here. I don't know if somebody else. So I thank you all for being here, for all the dedication and work that you've done. And I'd like the contract to accurately reflect all that good hard work. Thank you.
Okay, I'm next. So, a couple of questions. One, I'm fortunately not a lawyer, and so I can't really look to this, but also don't have the side-by-side for other charter schools. Could you tell us explicitly what is substantively different in this contract than any of the other contracts that we've approved for any of the other charter schools in the county?
You know, while we were sitting here, I went back and I looked at CMIT's contract that was approved by this board in 2011, and the background check language is the same, the policies and procedure language is the same, the waiver from the school system, the AMO objectives, the school board I mean, it's pretty, there are very few changes to this agreement versus the one that was approved for CMIT. This is our charter agreement. It wasn't the agreement that they brought to us. It's the charter agreement that we use, that we modeled after the guidance from the Maryland State Department of Education. They put out a policy guideline, a model policy contract, and we compared a lot of those provisions to our provisions, and we developed this agreement. But I'm happy to make whatever changes the Board of Education wants to make to the agreement.
And how many lawyers and staff in your department have reviewed this contract, and what is their legal opinion about its quality and validity?
I would say at least two internal attorneys have reviewed this contract, and this contract has been before the board before.
And what, maybe this is for other folks as well, if the board fails to take action, what are the implications to the possibility of College Park Academy not being ready to open up for the 300 students who've already been accepted on August 17th?
I think we would have to have some discussion with them, and certainly there would need to be a revised timeline, and we would need to come back to the board to have some discussion about the impact of delaying the decision.
Which is a fair answer, except if the implications are severe tonight and we don't take action tonight, and you come back and tell us it's too late. So
I would think we would come back.
Do we have any reason to believe, A, that that these issues can be addressed between now and June 27th, or B, that June 27th is going to be too late to make a decision for the College Park Academy to have a signed contract and to sign their lease and to tell their 300 students that they can enroll?
They've already signed a lease, and so, but in order for them to be able to begin hiring staff, they need the charter agreement to be done. I think that if there are changes that we need to make to the charter agreement, hopefully we should be able to make those changes between now and your next board meeting.
Thank you. I have Ms. Waller, Ms. Boston, Ms. Eubanks, and then are you part three? Are you round three? Ms. Jacobs? And Ms. Jacobs.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that one reason why we have so many questions is that the board is currently in litigation regarding another charter school that was dissolved, and we have not completely cleaned up the contract language from that situation. And so to our attorney, have you compared this contract with the contract of the dissolved charter school that, you know, we're in litigation with? Can we be assured that we are not opening ourselves up to the same types of liability? That's my first question. And secondly, Dr. Arbogast, the question I asked previously about one of the schools in my district and the number of students coming from that school, they will be going from 5th grade to 6th grade, and it would affect the enrollment at that school. That school has a 6th grade there.
Which school?
University Park Elementary School. Now, I don't know if it's correct or not, but it looks like they're going to have between 30 and 40 students that would be going to the new school. I don't know how many of those would be in the going.
14 entering 6th grade and 18 entering 7th grade.
Okay.
So the 14, you're correct.
Okay, so it would, okay. So I thought I was. I thought, and I may have, I think I have another school also that's has a 6th grade there. So it would not affect them tremendously. We don't know yet how it would affect those numbers. But I also asked a question about the farms. What is the percentage of farm students in Prince George's County?
60%.
60%. And so did I hear someone say that this contract is saying that it should be 50% farms should be attending this school? Did I hear that?
What the reference was, our Academy of Health Sciences is essentially a contract school. And in a contract school, it's one of our public schools, so we can control the entry. You cannot control the entry in a public charter school. So in Academy of Health Sciences, we actually have essentially 2 lotteries. We have names that go into the hat that are farms or first-generation college, and then we have those who don't meet that criteria. So then we pick 50 kids from the one list, 50 from the other. We can do that in a contract school. You're not allowed to do that in a public charter school. So the difference between the two.
So did I hear that language was in the contract, though?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Just
No.
wanted to make sure. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And if I could just kind of weigh in a little bit on the background check, our policy is actually, the contract is not in violation of our policy. Our policy is anyone who interacts with kids has to have the background check. For example, with Academy of Health Sciences, those kids interact with the staff on Prince George's Community College. Prince George's Community College does not require background checks for their professors. So in our MOU with the community college, anyone who comes into our area and who works with kids unsupervised must have background checks. But when our kids go out into the college, they interact with folks who don't have background checks. So that's not uncommon. So the rule is unsupervised contact with kids must have background checks. And this contract is not opposed to that policy.
So can I just ask that for clarity? So was the purpose of that contract, for example, that when the College Park Academy folks go onto University of Maryland's campus and interact with all kinds of folks, that we don't require by our contract that every single one of them get a background check? Is that kind of the purpose of the language?
That's not the language of this contract. The language of this contract is silent on whether their students actually go onto campus. And to the best of my knowledge, that's not a plan, at least in this coming year. They're really talking about the governing board. So if there's an architect on the governing board who all he does is look at the plans of St. Mark's and has no contact with kids, they're saying he doesn't need a background check. And actually, that's the way our policy actually reads. If this architect were to go in and tutor students at the school, he would have to have a background check.
Thank you. Ms. Boston.
Mr. Chair, over here. Ms. Waller asked a question about the contract, and I do think to facilitate clarity, and I'm not sure how many versions of the charter school form contract are out there based on Ms. Battle's comment about the CMIT, but there's two pieces of litigation. The Excel Charter Academy, the board was sued jointly with the charter school on a negligent hiring, negligent supervision to go to the issue. This is still a PGCPS school. And so the lawyers sued jointly. Then we also had the litigation with Possibility Prep, which was the charter school that was revoked that we have successfully settled, but at that time the board looked at that contract because the complaint that was filed was replete of challenging terms as vague and subject to several different interpretations. And at that time, the former general counsel was asked to create a completely new contract, which in looking at the Possibility Prep and the Excel Charter Academy contracts, which are the only contracts I don't have the CMIT contract, they are different. And an example would be the achievement level section in the Possibility Prep. Ms. Battle talked about there should be a baseline for achievement, but there's no reference to that in the College Park Academy agreement, whereas in the Possibility Prep contract there was a specific sentence that said the baseline standard of achievement will be an average same student progress of 1 grade per year, which is the only sentence that doesn't appear. It's consistent. So throughout the College Park agreement, there are discrepancies where certain things are not included that were, and there may be an explanation for that. I just don't know what they are. But I think from a liability standpoint and to protect both the governing board, and the governing board issue was a major issue with Possibility Prep because of, I think Ms. Higgins was the board member that raised it, this day-to-day involvement, and as the elected board members will remember, there was a kind of revolving door with the principal because the governing board and the principals were getting into who should be in charge. So what the board had asked for was for the lawyers to tighten up the language and be as clear as possible. And I think, and I agree with Ms. Battle, that we certainly can address those concerns, but I think we also need to have one form contract for charter schools. And to the extent that there's a negotiation, that should be a separate part so that for the board reviewing the contracts, then you can see in the future that these were separately negotiated and the justifications for it as opposed to the standard form, which is where we were, when I had talked to Mr. Thomas about this, that was what we were going to. So I'm hearing that we need to go to it sooner rather than later. But I just want to make sure that it's clear that I don't know what the CMIT contract, I can't say one way or the other because I only get involved when there's litigation, and I do have those contracts and they are different.
Right. But the contract that you started with College Park Academy was based on a form contract that you've used with previous folks. So I don't know how different it is from all of them, but Help us to understand that.
So we have updated the contract based on model policy and guidance from MSDE. Ms. White and I worked on updates to the contract, and we did that a couple of years ago so that the provisions in this contract are very similar, if not identical, to the provisions that were in the CMIT contract, which was on the board's agenda in 2011 and which the board voted on and passed in 2011. But again, I'm happy to work on this agreement over the next week and make whatever changes that you all need to be made.
Thank you. Ms. Boston.
At this point, and I agree with Ms. Higgins, I mean, this is, I think, a great opportunity for our students. I really do, across the state, regardless of how many students is coming from my district. I still think it's a great opportunity for the whole district as a whole. In saying that, I think we all have a lot of questions. I think there are questions that we do have can be fixed. I think this is just a matter of changing a word here, adding something here that we can all be comfortable with, because as it stands right now, I do not think my colleagues and I personally are not really comfortable with some of the language, and I think it needs to be tightened up. And I know we might have looked at this before, but as you look at things, you see something else you might have missed before, so I think that's where we are. Saying that, I would like to make a motion that we table 7.2, I believe it is, on our agenda to the next meeting. I think our meeting is on the 27th. I hope that will give you ample time, 2 weeks, to make some changes. If you've been taking notes of what a lot of our, a lot of my colleagues have said that they need answers to or need corrections to. Is that the proper motion to make, that we table 7.2?
Yes, as long as it's to a time certain, and someone seconds it, and it's no discussion.
Okay. And I would request that the board attorney...
There's no discussion on it. We cannot
It's after the motion to table is seconded, then there's no discussion. It's just a vote.
So I would like to add to my motion that the board attorney work with the Ms. Battle to make sure that some of the questions that the board has is answered.
That doesn't need to be part of the motion. That's just a director, and Ms. Battle and I will get together and work together.
Thank you.
I second.
Ms. Jacobs?
Ms. Eubanks second.
Ms. Eubanks seconded it. I take it that there can be no discussion on the issue to table. Is that correct? Call the roll, please, Ms. Parker.
On the motion, Dr. Anderson? Ms. Beck?
Aye.
Ms. Epps?
Aye.
Ms. Eubanks?
Aye.
Ms. Fellows?
Aye.
Ms. Higgins?
Aye.
Ms. Jacobs?
Aye.
Dr. Kaufman?
Aye.
Mr. Valentine?
Aye.
Ms. Waller?
Aye.
Ms. Boston?
Aye.
Dr. Eubanks?
No.
Motion passes.
Board Chair, just in terms of moving forward and clarification of the work, I'm hearing a couple of things. One, that we would certainly look at this particular contract and make revisions, and certainly we'll work with the attorneys, and then also have some communication with College Park Academy as a part of that process, given that this is somewhat sensitive in terms of timeline, to make sure that we're all communicating and working together. Second, it seems that this particular contract has an impact with some of the other contracts that we have, perhaps with the other charter schools, and I would think that if we're going to make some substantial changes, that we would also look at the impact that that would have on other contracts, particularly if there are things that the board would like to see as a part of our contractual agreements with our charter schools. And then third, looking at our process in terms of the lottery process itself, and that process is currently decentralized where schools are conducting their own lottery. And if the board would like to go in a different direction, that would certainly be some policy work that we would have to do in terms of our administrative procedures.
Thank you. And we would just ask that, that again, as you go through that process, that we have the attorneys engaged in that and come back with kind of some specific recommendations for us as a board in terms of their legal opinion about bringing back a contract that is sound and that is consistent with the decisions that we've made in the past.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm assuming we are back now to the remaining items in the 7.0 budget consent agenda. So I will now yield the floor to Dr. Crowley for an introduction of the budget consent agenda items number 7.1 through 7.4, with the exception of the one we removed, and items 7.6 to 7.8.
Thank you. Items 7.1, 7.3, 7.4, and 7.6 to 7.8 are before the board for approval of the following FY 2013 appropriation reassignments, change orders for Gwynn Park High School and Crossland High School, final acceptance and payment for pod conversion at William Beans Elementary School, and ratification of changes to the 2012-15 Local 2250 negotiated contract.
Move to accept.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded that the Board of Education approve items 7.1 through 7.4, accepted 7.2, and items 7.6 through 7.8 under the budget consent agenda. Is right, 7. Yeah, including 7.3, yes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Parker, please call the roll.
On the motion, Dr. Anderson.
Abstain.
Ms. Beck.
Aye.
Ms. Apps.
Aye, but I'm still concerned about the change orders.
Ms. Eubanks.
Aye.
Ms. Fellows.
Abstain.
Ms. Higgins. Ms. Jacobs.
Aye.
Dr. Kaufman.
Abstain.
Mr. Valentine.
Abstain.
Ms. Waller.
Aye.
Ms. Boston.
Aye.
Dr. Eubanks. Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. There are no items under the non-consent agenda, 8.1. There are no items under governance unfinished business, 9.0. So we move on to 10.0, new business first readers. I will now yield the floor to Dr. Crowley for an introduction of items numbers 10.1 through 10.7 under new business first readers.
Thank you. Items 10.1 to 10.7 are before the board as a first reader. Although there is no discussion required for first readers, I would request that the board suspend its rules and allow discussion on item 10.7, reconciliation and adoption of the fiscal year 2014 annual operating budget.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I understand that there's no discussion needed for us to do that?
Normally, there is no discussion under first reader, but the
But,
superintendent
right,
has asked you to waive
Right.
your process to discuss.
All right. And
Which
do
you
I
have
need
the
to vote on
authority
that? Yeah, that's fine.
You have to vote on it, yes.
Well, then let's vote. I heard somebody say.
I made a motion, but I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please signify by saying nay. The motion carries. Let's discuss the item.
Okay. Tonight, I'd like to provide the board with an update on our budget process and reconciliation of our fiscal year 2014 annual operating budget. Just a couple of words before we move forward with the updates. Certainly, we started this process with the board, with staff, and our community to talk about this budget, areas that were of importance to our schools, our community, as we look at improving student achievement, as well as the working conditions for our staff. And so as we move forward, tonight we would like to provide the board with an update on where we are in the fiscal year 2014 budget. We'll talk about the district priorities, our budget focus for this year, an explanation of variance between where we started in the superintendent's proposed budget and the board's adoption, and then feedback that we've received from the county and where we are to date. And then we'll look a bit at our revenue projections. So this is a chart that is familiar to the board and to our community as we've engaged in discussions about how we prepare our students to be college and career ready, and the innovation that we use to make sure that our students receive a solid, rigorous instructional program, and that we're recruiting staff and making sure that they are compensated so that we're able to retain them. And then making sure that as we think about student-based budgeting, we're working with our principal leaders to use tax dollars to improve instruction and the overall school climate across our district. And we're doing this by maintaining fiscal stability in the use of our taxpayer dollars. So as we think about our district priorities, we want to make sure that we use responsible budgeting to ensure a stable fund balance, that we continue to strengthen our instructional program, that it's rigorous, relevant, and engaging for our students, and we're using the supports of our central office to support the needs of schools, that we continue to invest in employee compensation, and then we also continue to expand our initiatives such as Middle College. We had a discussion about charter schools where we will move from 7 to possibly 8, that we continue secondary school reform efforts aimed at increasing the number of academic academies in our high schools, as well as supporting the needs of our students who are in alternative programs. So as a part of the budget focus and making sure that we're providing a rich and rigorous instructional program, we're doing this across the district with our community partners as well as our county partner in the implementation of transforming neighborhood initiatives, where the district has received funding targeted at a number of our schools. Continuing to provide a competitive compensation package, making sure that our students are educated in safe and supportive learning environments, that they have access to wireless technology, and that we're improving reliability and efficiency of our student transportation system. We had a number of challenges last year. We have learned from some of those efforts, and we've worked to make sure that as we think about opening in the fiscal year 14 cycle, that we have put in place all of the supports that we need to make sure that our students have the bus drivers and routing systems and support that they need to get to school on time. So this chart provides you with an explanation of the variance of where we were in terms of the Board of Education's requested budget of $1.69 billion, and then some additional things that we've added based on discussions with the board, based on discussions with the county council, as well as continuing discussions within the school system to look at our needs and the areas that we need to focus to make sure that we're providing a strong instructional program. We've listed here a number of initiatives for graduation and academic intervention as we look at dropout rates and as we look at implementation of our interventions. We are recommending some additional supports to help make sure that schools are implementing programs with fidelity, that we're looking at our graduation rates, and that we're working very closely with schools, targeting students who may be at risk of dropout and providing the appropriate interventions, supports, and services for those students. SVB, there's a recommendation to add some additional funding. One of the things that we've done this year that's a little bit different is we've started earlier in our classroom balancing, where we've worked with principals to identify their needs across classrooms, and we've directed some funds to classroom balancing early. And there are some remaining funds because we know that things change during the summer, and we'll have to come back and look at those schools, look at needs, look at class size across schools, and conduct balancing where needed. There is some additional funding that's been provided through the county for transforming neighborhood initiatives, 1.4 for a total of, I think, close to $7.6 million. We have some existing legal obligations through an MOU with Local 2250. That's reflected here in the variance. We've had discussions about middle school athletics, and there's a recommendation here to reinstitute middle school athletics. This particular item was cut during some difficult and challenging financial times, and there's a recommendation, given what we know about middle school and developmental needs of students, not only before and during school, but also after school, that there's a need to clearly engage them in positive activities. And so the recommendation here is that we reestablish middle school athletics and other opportunities for engagement of our middle school student population. The board asked that we go back and look at compensation for employees who are part-time or temporary, and so we've made a recommendation for a 2% increase for staff that fall within that group. There's some additional funding reserved for negotiations. The original superintendent's proposed budget had an allocation of about $23.5 million, and this would be in addition to those dollars to negotiate with our collective bargaining partners. There's also a recommendation to continue to build internal capacity around mentoring and supporting our principals, and so we're working very carefully within our Human Capital Office and looking at our talent development to make sure that as we bring new principals into the organization that we're supporting them at the level that they need in order to be successful. So this would target new principals as well as some of our continuing principals who need that level of support. We also have additional board members, and the 4.0 positions reflect the additional board members and the salaries and benefits associated with bringing on additional board members. We've talked a lot about our transportation needs, and we know that we had to hire over 100 bus drivers at the beginning of this school year to meet our transportation needs. And so as we look at transportation and we look at our routes, we know that we will need about 33 more bus drivers and about 8.5 aides. We've already moved forward with the recruitment process. We had a very successful recruitment fair, and we feel very confident that we can meet the goal of having the requisite number of bus drivers in place at the beginning of the school year. Replacement of school equipment reflects our continuing need to make sure that our schools have the furnishing and equipment that they need, such as tables and chairs, tables in the cafeteria, all fall within school equipment. Within General Counsel, there's been a recommendation of a 1.0 using existing funds. We have a contractual line, and we would like to use those funds so you don't see an additional amount represented here. Tuition reimbursement and stipend has been a topic of ongoing discussion, particularly with our teachers union and ways in which we can compensate our teachers for courses that they need in order to meet certification requirements, and additional stipends that have been a part of the compensation package. One of the areas that, and you've probably heard a lot about, the teacher evaluation system across the state. This particular line item reflects our need to provide ongoing professional development and support for our teachers and administrators in the implementation of the new teacher evaluation system. Dual enrollment is another legislative item that comes to us, and it's House Bill 740, which indicates that students who are dual enrolled can attend courses, and the district is required to pay for those courses. Certainly, as a part of the legislation, we can seek reimbursement. We don't know how many students will take advantage of dual enrollment beyond what we're currently doing, and we think we are well positioned given some of the current initiatives that are in place with our partners at Prince George's Community College, as well as University of Maryland and other colleges. But certainly this is a House bill that we have to implement. We'll learn some things during the first year, but based on current enrollment and what we think will happen, we've recommended an allocation of $437,000. The next line item is a position of 504 coordinator. As we've looked at our provision of services for students who have a disability but do not qualify for IDEA, we want to make sure that we have 504 plans and that we're working very closely with schools in the development of those plans and doing the necessary professional development to ensure compliance. And so I'm recommending a 504 supervisor. Those duties are currently, distributed across another position. And I think given some of the challenges that we're seeing and as we look ahead, it's important to have someone who is designated as the 504 officer. And then finally, there is a recommendation for textbooks and a lease purchase agreement. Our original hope and recommendation to the board was that we purchase our textbooks, and that cost was a little bit over $10 million. But given some of the recent cuts that have come back to us when our budget went to the county to the tune of about $10 million, we were not able to purchase those textbooks. And instead, we are recommending a lease purchase agreement at $2.2 million. So just to point out a couple of negatives of things that we're reducing. I talked about the SBB reserve because of some of the work that we're doing earlier in the game. We are also getting better information about unemployment benefits, our health benefits, and we've recommended some reductions there. There was a position in the org chart for deputy superintendent, and just given our current organizational structure, we are not recommending that that position be funded at this time, and so there's a deletion here. Recently, we received information from our engineering report that there were some structural challenges at Greenbelt Middle School that would require us to delay the movement of students at Robert Goddard French Immersion program into that building for next year. And so we are deleting the 9 positions that were associated with the move. That move will be delayed, and we're in the process of communicating that information. We've talked to the principal, and we've talked to PTA individuals and others, and we're going to continue to make sure that parents are aware that there will be a delay in that project. Early lease purchase payment, again, there are some reductions listed here. And then the last item that I want to point out is 3 positions for risk management. And those positions are a result of some work that we're doing internally and looking at liability and looking at some of the challenges that we're facing around risk management. And those positions would help us with providing training and support to hopefully reduce the number of cases that are coming forward, and we would see a cost savings there. So the 3.0 positions would be allocated out of some existing resources. The final budget total is $1.687 billion. Again, this is a reflection of where we were in terms of the Board of Education's look at the budget and decisions prior to going to the county, and then from about mid-March forward to date, some of the changes that have occurred. And with that, we would be happy to answer any questions.
have Ms. Higgins, Ms. Beck, Ms. Epps, and Ms. Fellows. Might do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Crowley, and thanks to all your staff for crunching the numbers. It's been a hard game to follow. I guess I want to ask first about the SBB charter school changes. So that $3,746,000, is that for our regular public schools, or is all of that for the charter schools?
Good evening. The vast majority of that is for the non-charter schools.
The non-charter schools. Okay, so that category really has two titles,
two dimensions,
components.
but the vast majority is for the non-charter schools.
Okay. And Dr. Crowley, you talked about the $7.6 million in the T&I funding and then the $1.4 million. Can you help me understand those numbers?
Sure. Going into the process, we received an allocation for T&I, and then later on there were some additional funds added for T&I. And I'm going to ask Ms. Goldson to talk a bit about T&I and where we are in that process in partnership with the county.
Okay, but can I just ask a math question then? So that $1.4 million is part of the 7.6, or that's additional? It was 7.6, and now they've given us an additional 1.4.
It's part of the. It's part of it. It was originally
okay.
6 point whatever. And
okay,
then
but we had allocated that 7.6, and this is the remaining money that we're now allocating.
This is the additional money that was allocated for T&I.
Okay,
from where we started.
All right.
Which totals 7.6.
7.6 total. Okay, I think I got it.
T&I actually will represent 22 schools, and of those 22 schools, we will be looking to put full-day pre-K in those schools that have already existing half-day pre-K. Looking at after-school programs with transportation 2 days a week, a summer bridge program for middle school for students going from middle school to high school, interventions for third grade reading and fifth grade mathematics, as well as seventh grade reading and mathematics, providing assistance through the creation of a position called a T&I dropout prevention specialist that will assist at the middle and high school level, and then the creation of positions called T&I Community Resource Coordinator, which will provide services, wraparound services, social services at the 22 schools that are identified. And lastly, providing Hillside Connection support at the high schools that are identified in the 22 schools.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very, very exciting and a real opportunity for those schools who have such challenges, extra challenges. Could I ask you how much it costs to add a half-day pre-K, add the half-day for one class?
$78,500.
$78,500.
Yes.
And the children who are, I'm sorry.
And those were in schools that already have an existing
pre-K.
0.5 pre-K.
So that's adding that extra half-day is in the $78,000.
Correct.
And the children who are eligible for pre-K are coming from homes of poverty?
Yes, of these schools, yes.
Okay. And that's true just generally. You're not eligible for pre-K in our system unless it's income eligible. Is that correct?
Correct.
Ms. Dr. Arbogast, do you want to?
Correct. You could go right there.
Yes, ma'am. Income eligible.
Income eligible. Okay. So I guess I'm going to make a case for the $1.121 million that is allocated for middle school instead be allocated for, it looks like we could do, I'm not real good at this, it looks maybe 12 or 13 classes of additional children to increase their pre-K, right? If it's $78,000 per class, and if we took that 1.121, how many classes could we do?
Correct. It's $78,500 if that school currently has an existing 0.5
right.
pre-K. Correct.
Right. Mr. Sheeran, can you do the math?
I can do math too.
Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Goldson. I didn't mean to imply a thing. But we don't pay you to do math.
She's very good at it.
I'm sorry, huh?
She's very good at math.
That's right. Okay. Well, I'm not. So
is your recommendation to take the 1.1
Two
million
on.
from middle school?
That's right.
Okay.
644 and divided by, my thing doesn't divide, the 78,500. How many extra classes? And I guess I want to say, and Dr. Crowley, you did talk about middle school, and I certainly understand. I think it was under Dr. Hornsby that it came in for the first time for us to do middle school athletics, and I certainly understand the value of that. My thinking, though, is that if we can catch these kids who already have so many challenges and give them full-day pre-K, we're already seeing test results that the fact that we've had to cut back and we can impact more children, that's going to have such a significant impact in their lives. That's what I'm wondering. What would be the number? 14?
It comes out to an equivalent of 14 positions.
14,
correct.
14 positions, so that would be 28 classes.
No, 14 total school locations. 14 additional locations in addition to the ones that I presented earlier.
So the 78,000 is per class or per school?
Per school, which has
Dr.
one.
Arbogast is running to
Correct.
answer that.
Correct. Changing the AM/PM to. It would,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm sorry.
28 classes if you're doing a half a day.
Yes,
For-
okay, so 28.
Correct.
So
14
it
if
would
it
be
were full-time.
Okay.
So the
I just
78
also want us to be cautious of the fact that we would, one, need to identify those locations, and two, have to do assessment of whether we would have the space.
Well, we have had the space. It wasn't until 2 years ago we were doing pre-K. full day.
Correct. I'm just saying when we make the
When it
identification of
has
the
to do
additional
is to make,
sites.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just want to say the 78 is just a half a pre-K teacher and half a
Half a para. Correct.
and then
And
a
additional
little bit of a
funds.
supplies.
So
that's how we
but
got the
if we
78,000.
if we were to increase the children who are already getting a half day, and a half day in pre-K is how many hours?
Yeah, but think about this. So
Go ahead.
We had a full day pre-K, which uses a whole classroom. So we went to 2 half.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
By increasing
We're gonna
both
need
of
more
them,
space. That's what you're
2
saying.
classrooms. So what Ms. Golson is saying is we really would have to do an assessment on school by school to see if they have the space. We're really talking
got
about a huge expansion of square footage.
And but we're doing it for 22 of our schools that we've been able to identify.
Actually, it's not 22. TNI supports 22. We're actually doing it in 6 elementary schools and 2 K-8 locations, so a total of 8.
And how many students? Oh, where'd you go?
I tried to slip that.
Okay, sorry. So how many students are in a pre-K class?
20.
20. So you said 28 classes. 28 classes?
14 times 2 is 28.
Okay, I'm working it. So if there's 28
Good math.
classes with 20 students, then with the extra money, we would get, am I right about that, 560?
Kids?
Huh?
28
We could have
classes times
impacted
20.
an additional 560 children. I just,
Correct.
I know I keep marching to the same drum, and I guess part of it is because of my work in the last 30 years in the county, and seeing that the extra challenge, and I'm speaking to the choir, I know that, but the challenges that children of poverty have and the test results that we see when we can give them full-day pre-K, and this is a life-changing experience for them that can help them be on a road, and it also impacts us academically because then we're going to have less kids that we're seeing at 3rd grade who can't read. So we'll certainly give the rest of my time up and have my colleagues talk about their issues, et cetera, and see down the road where we are in terms of motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairperson?
And Ms. Beck.
Could I have that paper you're reading from?
You sure can. I'm
That
more than
helps me.
positive I provided it in a weekly update probably about 2 months ago, but
Okay.
I will definitely provide it momentarily.
I think it helps when we're reading from something.
Yes.
I'm not really an auditory learner.
Not a problem. I'll take care of that in a few minutes.
The principal, and actually what I'm going to request is a breakdown or a disaggregate the $400,000 number for principal mentoring. Is that all FTEs? And a breakdown of the 46 positions for TNI funding, and a breakout of the SBB charter changes, 3.7 million. Knowing that they're not all charter related, what are they related, so that I can explain it better, understand it better. I have a question that's not in your list, but are we still purchasing the meal plans for the middle college? It was, okay, I know I had a conversation with Dr. Height that this was $1,900 per student, per middle school student. Middle college.
In the original middle college, we were going to contract with the college to use their food services, and that was how you saw that number.
Right.
We nixed that, and now we're just using our own food service.
Okay, so we're not buying the food plan anymore?
No, it was a good catch. We cut that.
Okay.
That was a good catch.
Because I thought that was like another $760,000 we could be looking at. So I've missed that also. Could you give me the cost of how that has transitioned out of buying the meal ticket into a more cost-sensible plan? And I'm like Ms. Higgins with middle school athletics. I would like to see the breakout of what we could do with that $1.1 million. When we had middle school athletics for that hot second with Dr. Hornsby, we never really grew it, and the principals had a rough time because every season it was the same 12 kids. And I think we need to look at what was done before so we don't replicate that again. And what does this 1.1 buy us? It's more than one FTE. I would think some of that might be stipend for the administrator who's overseeing the program.
At the school, right,
Okay.
and materials.
So I think breaking that number down would be helpful.
And we'll provide a breakout. In terms of the middle school recommendation, a couple of things. One, this recommendation reflects a lot of, as we engaged in conversations across the budget forums and across schools, this kept coming back in terms of a need with concerns about what is happening to our young people after school and opportunities that are available to them. I would also say to you, as a part of some of the discussions that we've had about middle school athletics, is seeing this as an opportunity to do something that is new and different for our young people, and that there are certainly a lot of different activities that students can be engaged in that will promote healthy decision-making and good physical health. And so this may be an opportunity to do some of those things using some of the latest research on more non-traditional kinds of activities that kids can be engaged in, and also trying to get more kids involved so that we don't have the same 12 kids, as you stated, participating in the fall and in the spring. But to have schools really look at opportunities to engage a larger group of kids using activities such as soccer or lacrosse, but also dance and aerobics and other activities that kids who might not participate in softball would join a Zumba class or would join some type of aerobics or dance class after school. So this is an opportunity to engage a larger number of students. I also want to just comment real briefly on Ms. Higgins' comment about pre-K and You will probably not find a bigger advocate of pre-K than myself, and I know the importance, and certainly the research bears out the importance of early intervention. I think that there is some work that we need to do as a school district and as a county around growing pre-K. Certainly some of the work through TNI, but also looking at our other partners in pre-K and other child providers who are also responsible for early childhood education. And I also think that there's some work that needs to happen at the county and state level about all of us coming together with pre-K as a focus and determining how we can really allocate or redirect resources so that we not only have income eligible pre-K, but we look at more universal application of pre-K. So certainly these are some things that I think as a community that we need to take a look at.
Thank you. Ms. Epps.
Thank you. Very excited about the budget process. Question about the reduction, the SBB reduction. So this earlier in the meeting, we had a speaker talk about reduction in school counselors. So I wanted to know if that reduction is part of what they're feeling like at schools in terms of Greenbelt Middle, and with regard to impacting those types of positions.
I'll be happy to address that. When you were looking on your either on the screen or on your handout, the reduction that you're seeing of the SBB reserve is simply the offset to the increase. So, and in fact, responding back to Mrs. Beck's question about the relationship between the charter school and the SBB, as we looked at the detail, the full dollar amount is completely associated with student-based budgeting. The reason why there was a slash with charter is because through the just the consolidation of the data, the FTEs, there's 37.5 FTEs out of that total that are the authorization that the board would provide for the FTE count. There's no dollars associated with that. Charter schools has its own funding separate, it's all separate apart from SBB, if that helps.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right.
So additionally, you referenced the speaker, and certainly we're working with schools to look at student-based budgeting and the impact that that's having in terms of not only in the instructional program, but the support services side of things as well, particularly counseling. Mm-hmm. I'm a big proponent of counseling and the importance of having school counselors available to support the needs of our students. And the speaker referenced the importance of academic, personal, social, and career development, which are the three major domains of counseling, and we need to make sure that those services are provided in schools. So for the schools that have made a decision to either reduce or eliminate their counselor, we're working with those schools to determine what exactly is their plan to address those specific areas and supporting the needs of students. And then we're going to be coming back to the table and making some recommendations to make sure that those supports are available in schools. So those conversations will be taking place with principals over the next 2 weeks. We have, I think, a total of 11 schools where we will be having those conversations to make sure that supports are in place for students.
Okay, and I also in the reduction of a deputy superintendent. Which deputy superintendent is that? Coleman.
It's a vacant.
Oh, okay. It's vacant. Okay.
It's a vacant position that was in the org chart that was picked up.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. And my last question is, I was like, you know, my last question is on the issue of, you know, the $1.2 million and for, you know, pre-K and ramp that up in a good way. It looks like we can do some wonderful things in terms of early intervention. I am sensitive, however, to the kinds of impacts that middle school children that athletics and activities can have. So I'm wondering to what extent there's been conversation again, because we have such a great, other agencies that provide those kinds of services. So is there an opportunity to partner with Maryland Park and Planning and other entities like that within the county, so that we don't have to make a choice between pre-K versus middle school athletics?
We've had some preliminary conversations with Park and Planning. Certainly there's a need to have continued conversations about the hours in which they have supports available to students and where there are gaps and ways in which we can work together to engage a larger number of students. So there's some additional work that needs to be done with our partners to make sure that we can cover the bases and provide a good continuum of supports for our students. We know that when students are in school, they're a captive audience, and sometimes in the transition, sometimes students make another choice. So part of that is to look at ways in which we can do work on site and then other opportunities that are available within communities.
I think that's good. And I think that maybe that's what we need to talk about, ways so that we do capture the children while on site. And also, while we're talking about those partnerships, there are those programs that are also through continuing education and community services through Prince George's County Public Schools, certainly the University of Maryland, and then that also gives an opportunity for exposure to higher education as well. So we may have, I do think that there is an opportunity to really, really be innovative in how we address this issue without the traditional budgetary route. Thank you.
Ms. Fellows.
Thank you. Could you explain to me how the $5,520,087 is going to be absorbed in the 2014 budget? I mean, where are those? Because it's a reduction, if I'm not correct. Where's it going? Where are we going to see that impact? On page 7.
You're speaking of the 5.5 million?
Yes.
You're going to see that spread across a variety of categories of spending. What the presentation is trying to explain is that on page 6, there's an array of adjustments, positive in nature, and then to offset that, there's an array of reductions. The net change between the two is the 5.5 million, which is a reduction to the overall budget.
Right. I guess my question is, if we're going to get some details about where that reduction is $5.5 million is going to impact in those, what you call it, the variety of different areas. Can we get that breakdown as to where those reductions are going to be and where the hits are going to take place?
No, the 5.5 is a net number. It's a composite result of adds and subtracts, neither of which equal 5.5. That's why on page 6, there's a whole array of adjustments to the budget that are positive, and then to offset that, on page 7, there's an array of reductions. And so by adding and subtracting, you're going to come to a net number to the budget total. And so the budget total is that $1.687 billion.
So a lot of the things that you see as negatives are things that we've had to make reductions around, and I talked a bit about decisions around textbooks that if we had had the money, we would have certainly looked at purchasing, but we didn't. So as you look at the positives and negatives, it's to the tune of about $5 million that we had to make cuts overall. Another example of a positive inflow in terms of revenue would have been net taxable income, which is going to result in some additional revenue, and that was factored in. So again, if you look at what we added and then what we took away, we absorbed the $5 million through those cuts.
Okay.
That was actually much larger.
Okay. The other question is, I know you talked about the cost for existing pre-K programs. if there is no existing pre-K program, how much would if an additional pre-K program cost the school system? I mean, has a needs assessment been done on particular schools or areas that would need a pre-K program? And then what is the cost to that for a full day and or half day? Have we done that? Because you said how much it would cost for existing, but what about if there's not an existing pre-K program, but there seems to be a need in that area? What is the cost to that?
So I would think in terms of looking at startup cost for a new, are you saying the startup cost for a new class with the teacher and an assistant and
yes.
supplies and materials to start a class?
Right. About 160.
Dr. Arbogast?
About 160.
It's about 160.
And on page 6, where we have the dual enrollment and the teacher evaluation, where these numbers come from? Because is there any kind of specificity around the numbers, additional tuition reimbursement? Are these just standard?
Dr. Carley, I can take the SB 740. So the way SB 740 works, no college, no public institution or college can charge tuition to a student who's dually enrolled.
Okay.
We have to pick up that cost, but we're only picking up 75% of the tuition. So if the credit hour is $100, we're billed $75. We currently have about 200 kids currently in dual enrollment, so we got the 437 by taking the 75% percentage. We think, Ms. Fellows, that number is going to skyrocket over the next 2 years. It could easily hit 2 million, 3 million in 2 years, because as kids figure this out and as we promote it, tons of seniors will be taking courses at the community college. And this is across the state. So.
Okay. And my last question is on page 7, the early lease purchase payments. About how many early lease how many do we have?
I don't have the exact number, but there are, every year for a number of years, the school system has utilized lease purchase financing primarily for buses. And so in the transportation department, it's a huge impact. This is affecting a couple of years' worth. And by being able to address this, we're able to save the money through a current year action.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Boston.
I had a question going back to the summer bridge program, I think was mentioned. Will that cost for the summer school for the middle students, is that cost absorbed by the school system, or is this a cost that would be get to the parents?
School system.
So we will be paying for the summer school and the summer bridge program?
It's just the summer bridge for the 6 schools that are identified on the list that will be sent to you from middle to high. And yes, it will be absorbed by the school system.
Oh, great. That's great. I want to put in plug in for the middle school athletics. I do believe that it's important. We have kids that are obese now, and I think, having some type of activity, some type of after-school activity with kids and not just going home, sitting up there, I think is important. I think it's part of the healthy initiative that we need to do as far as our middle school kids. And also, we're losing a lot of our middle school kids. We're losing them in middle schools. They're becoming more and more behavior problems that our principals are having to address. And I think if we had some other type of outlet for them, a lot of times if kids are there participating in some type of activity or sports, sometimes the coaches can help them to not be a behavior problem, encouraging them to keep their grades up. So I think it's important, especially in our middle school, because that's where we're losing a lot of our kids. And I think we need to put something back in middle school to give our kids a little bit more incentive to want to do well, and also for health reasons.
Okay, I'm next on the list. I'll say briefly, I would just kind of ask you, because this is an interesting issue for me as well. My wife is an early childhood expert and would probably kill me, but as a parent, my daughter was in the 7th grade doing middle school athletics the year that it got cut in the 8th grade. And it really did have a big impact on her and her fellow students. So talk to me, if you can, about the process that you went through to make that tough decision about whether you add more preschool programs or bring in a middle school athletics program. Why did you decide that this was the right balance?
So, as I indicated, we went back and looked at topics that surfaced at the board table, and certainly this is one that we've had some discussion around. And also, as a part of the budget process, we had community forums where we had not only parents and other members of the community, but staff weigh in on things that they thought that we should consider as a part of the fiscal year 14 budget. And this was one that kept coming back. And so, quite frankly, we did not approach this as middle school athletics versus preschool. We certainly see the value in both of them. When we looked at T&I, we knew that through that initiative we would begin to make some headway towards full-day pre-K, but we also know that logistically there's some things that we need to put in place as a system to grow pre-K in our district. And some of that, I think, as I said earlier, will come internally in the work that we do, but also that we needed to spend the year to do some additional work with our county partners, our private providers, and also at the state level, so that we had a targeted plan to grow pre-K, full-day pre-K in the system, looking at income eligible and then moving to more universal opportunities for our families. The other advantage that certainly we've not talked about is we know that once we get some of our families that are perhaps making a different choice because it's half day, hopefully some of those parents will want to stay in our system and go through, and that's a way to increase our enrollment. So again, we know that there are benefits, and our plan is to continue to work on this, to develop a targeted plan for pre-K in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Valentine.
Thank you. I'm as big a pre-K advocate as anybody else, but I'm also a former middle school student here, middle school teacher here in the county. So I understand not only the health benefits of athletics, but also the benefits in the classroom as well. But I wanted to sort of make a note that many of the gains people have seen in full-day pre-K are lost by grade 3 because of the support that is put into those students who are given those full-day allocations are not continued after they move into 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. So my recommendation is that in places where we do add full-day, that we also look at some of the, you said grade 3 intervention, or to sort of couple that to make sure that we are protecting our investment in the K sphere. I think the idea that it's an either or, I think someone said, you know, it shouldn't be, because a lot of the gains you're seeing in K are lost when you cut programs in 8 as well. So it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. You want to be able to invest, then protect your investment, and I believe you will see those gains. So I think as we're looking at the pre-K, and I think, again, I'm a huge supporter of expanding pre-K. I have 2 pre-K students at home waiting for me. But how we, I'm sorry, actually they're watching me on TV right now, so I was going to wave to my babies on TV. It's bath time. But I think, so how we can couple that, or how do we support those schools from especially those parents who are income eligible, to say, you have the full day pre-K, now here is the follow-up in grade 1, 2, and 3 to make sure that we're not seeing our investment lost. Thank you.
Thank you. And my humble apologies, Ms. Jacobs, you are next.
Thank you. So my questions go to bullet number 4, the district's priorities, and specifically to continued investments in the middle college, charter schools, secondary school reform, and alternative ed. And if I could just concentrate on charter schools and the alternative ed piece. Yep, Dr. Arbogast, it's me again with alternative ed. But first, to charter schools, it occurred to me from a budget perspective that as we look at what you're going to bring back on the 27th, we constantly have gone through the conversation about how we fund charter schools, whether or not they're funded at the levels they need to be funded. They are public schools. And my recollection, if I'm not incorrect, around CMIT, for example, if you look at the minutes, there were a number of issues that the board raised around CMIT, particularly the lottery, but also we had transportation issues that the district had to go back and assume costs for, or at least take on the transportation piece, and that was specific to contract language. So I'm just thinking that's another budget issue that needs to be dealt with. But my specific question is, what are the investments that you're talking about specifically for charter schools? And then in the alternative ed, more than just, plopping it in the budget again in writing, what exactly does that look like?
As far as the alternative education, the funds are for the College Summit program. There's funds for professional development. There's funds for some FTEs, which are behavior specialists, and there's also an IT initiative in that as well. As far as a charter school, the per pupil allocation for FY14 is $8,892. So that's what is used to multiply against the enrollment, and then ends up being the allocation on a school-by-school basis.
And when we had the transportation issue last year and we assumed the transportation cost, was that charged to the charter school?
I don't know.
Was that charged back to the charter school? Because remember, they hired a company and it was a...
CMIT.
I'd have to investigate that. I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, that was CMIT, and that's why I'm saying that's a budget issue, and I'm curious if we actually ended up doing that.
So, just a couple of comments.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So certainly, I think the conversation that we had tonight in terms of charter schools is a very rich discussion in terms of some of the things that, from a policy perspective, of things that we need to look at in our investment in charter schools. I think from the programmatic side, to continue to look at the needs of our students, our families across the district, and where there are opportunities to add, to provide innovative opportunities to engage families that are perhaps not currently engaged in our school system, that becomes a vehicle. So the investment is not so much always a dollar amount, but the work that we do in providing a continuum of opportunities for families. In terms of the alternative education, the recommendations that Mr. Sheeran just outlined came from actually a committee process. I pulled together a committee of representatives from the alternative schools, and we talked about some of the programming challenges and some of the needs that they're seeing on behalf of students. And a lot of the discussion was around behavior. A lot of it was around the training of teachers. A lot of it was making sure that there are opportunities. If we're talking about college and career ready, how does that show up in the alternative schools in terms of academies? And there was a discussion about technology, which is why we moved in the direction of technology, and we moved in the direction of College Summit, so that students in the alternative program had access to opportunity just as they would in a comprehensive high school. And then there were some policy procedural things that we talked about around teacher selection and other ways that we could strengthen the alternative schools. And so I would say to you that those are ongoing conversations that we need to have as we look at our alternative schools and ways in which we can expand opportunities for students who, for whatever reason, do not thrive in a traditional or a comprehensive secondary school.
Okay, so thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Carley. And I think it really matters because at the end, the alternative ed is not part of the student-based budgeting, right? Because they're smaller schools. And so that, I think, has an impact on those students. And then I guess my other question, maybe this is a bring-back question, on the alternative education students, alternative education options, how many of those, from a breakdown perspective, you could do it by district, I guess, but how many of those students fall into the T&I areas in terms of that? And it's not necessarily a foregone conclusion, but I think what happens is because they're in a school that doesn't have student-based budgeting we miss out on some of the opportunities that they could otherwise have? And then have we looked at, or are we increasing the virtual learning process that I think went well for a number of students in the alternative ed program? And then I would put a plug in for Spanish immersion for if we're not going to, if people aren't submitting applications, or if they're submitting the application and they're not meeting the requirements that we need to have happen around charter, then we need to find people around different areas to come to the table and encourage them to come to the table and help them through the process so that we can have that. I think Spanish immersion is a great idea and long overdue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We agree.
Well funded. No, I said the
Agreement is good. Dr. Anderson.
My sentiments have already been expressed, but I do want to stress what I think the importance of early childhood education is, the pre-K education, to give more of our students a head start in school, but not at the expense of middle school athletics. So many of the students, middle school students, I think more than any other group, needs to seek ways to expend some of that extra energy, and so often they do better in the classroom as a result of that. So if we could seek additional streams of funding for both of those programs, it would be a great thing.
Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I just want to echo first the comment that was just made about Spanish language immersion programs. I think also in particular, if we're talking about research-based academic programs that make a big difference in addition to early childhood education, actually dual language immersion programs, from the research I've seen, have been shown to be very effective, and it's also a way to get buy-in from both native Spanish speakers and their families as well as non-native Spanish speakers, and let the kids see that they are valued, that their skills that they bring and their knowledge they bring to the table is valued just as much as someone who speaks English. A question about one of the other line items that I don't think we've discussed much is the principal mentor program. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how it works? Is it, are these existing sitting principals who are promoted in these positions, or these outside trainers through, for example, the NISL program that I know the county has? Is it actually a program, or are these people who are sort of on call to help as needed? Do they have, how many principals does it cover, and how is that all determined?
Number one, good evening. So, as you know, the COMAR regulations require us to have a robust induction program for principals, and so we're trying to make a seamless combination of the support that the instructional directors lead with the on day-to-day job-embedded kind of PD they get from an instructional director, and trying to make it seamless to support our novice principals and our first-year principals. So we've done a lot of work with the Wallace Foundation to really increase the capacity of our mentors, but our current structure doesn't really give us the flexibility to sustain it long-term. And what I mean by that is we currently have our sitting principals are our mentors for our new principals. And so you can imagine a busy high school principal trying to mentor, you know, a new high school principal and what that would take. So we're trying to be more strategic in how we gear support towards them. And so we're looking to have an additional FTEs to support that work. They'd be responsible for supporting both the new principals, also supporting principals coming through our Aspiring Leadership Program, our ALPS program, to really give mentoring support through their continuum through the principalship. And so we want to have people on board to also help us think through what that looks like in terms of building a model that's robust and can sustain us beyond the scope of a grant and our current model.
So these would be potentially former principals?
Yeah, we're looking at a combination of possibly retired principals, principals in our system that are interested in maybe supporting a residency type program where we can actually have folks who get on the job training and experience as a resident principal potentially, where a principal could step out kind of like a student teaching experience and then support other principals in that model. So our goal is to really shape out a very functional and sustainable program moving forward. So I'll be happy to kind of outline our thinking moving forward for this body.
Thank you.
Looks like we may have one or two round two issues. Mr. Valentine.
I just had one question about professional development around some of the specialty programs and whether there's any consideration or there's been any requests from particular specialties within our French immersions programs or our Montessori programs around professional development in areas where we may not be able to do it internally, and whether there's opportunities for those specialty teachers to go outside of the county. And I don't see that reflected here, but is that something you all are considered and would be attractive to current teachers and teachers who would want to come and see having a professional development as a way to attract and retain the quality teachers here for the county?
We actually didn't put a line item in the budget specifically for specialty schools adding to, but we do have money set aside. For example, specifically for the Montessori, we were actually looking for Montessori trained teachers when we have a vacancy. So HR is attuned to that. But I have to admit, there's not a great deal of money around the specialty schools with professional development. Where you saw it in the budget this year was really around secondary school reform, training teachers towards the academy programs. And that's probably one of the few places that you see professional development in this year's FY14 budget. We have a fair amount of money in Race to the Top around professional development in around advanced placement, international baccalaureate, AVID. So that's where you'll see those. But there wasn't a lot in the budget this year around professional development.
Dwayne, I might add also just in terms of the work that we're doing with teacher evaluation, a lot of the focus on helping teachers with training through SLOs, some of the framework for teaching work, and just the implementation process for our new evaluation systems coming on board for teachers. So a lot of emphasis in terms of PD is also in that arena.
All right, seeing no further questions, staff, thank you very much for that excellent info. Ms. Higgins, okay, I had you once, I didn't have you for round two. All right, hold off on that thing. I'm not sure I thank you just yet. Let me wait and see how you answer this question.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted to go back to Ms. Epps' question regarding the school counselors before I go back to pre-K. So how many counselors did you say, Dr. Crowley? How many schools do not have any counselors in their schools at all?
There were 4 last year. Actually, there were 6, 2 restored. So there were 4 from last year, and then we added 7 more. So there's a total of 11 schools that will not have counselors.
Okay. So, I understood that the school counselors are responsible for managing the 504s and for some implementation in regards to the IEPs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And those schools that didn't have any school counselors last year, how did they handle that?
How did they handle the 504s and the IEPs?
Yeah.
So we have schools that have designated individuals that support those schools without a counselor. So you may have a PPW, people personnel worker, who provides some support. And some of those schools also have, they may not have a dedicated counselor in the building, but we try to provide some additional counseling services to add to those schools or provide some support to those schools.
Okay. I understand that you're going to evaluate and talk to those schools that don't have school counselors in terms of how they do that. I guess I would also ask that the 6 schools that did not have school counselors last year evaluate whether there was an increase or reduction in regards to suspensions, expulsions, and school climate index to see whether there was any kind of impact in regards to that. I'd be very interested, and you said Dr. Arbogast, 2 schools put their school counselors back in. I'd be interested in having administration talk to those principals as to what kind of made the difference in regards to that.
We can do that analysis, and we've actually been looking at our discipline suspensions as a part of our ongoing monitoring.
To see if a school counselor presence or absence made a difference. And I really appreciate Ms. Boston and Dr. Anderson's and the other jocks here to talk about the value of middle school athletics. You know, I played every sport badly one could play. And I really think that there is a value to that, and certainly middle school athletics. And I guess, you know, in some ways, Dr. Anderson, you were talking, you know, it'd be nice, Solomon, can we find money to kind of do the both? And I support seeing if we can find that money. But in the absence of that, I guess I have the other thing that makes me kind of weigh towards the preschool is the fact that the community centers that we have in the county do offer athletics, and they do offer scholarships. If you're income eligible for any program that's $35 or more, they'll offer free scholarships. Now, that doesn't solve all those problems in regards to that, but it also addresses other options that the middle school students have. And in the absence of having extra money, I guess I would go back, and I have a couple of questions for you, Dr. Arbogast and Dr. Crowley, in terms of what school year did we reduce pre-K to half-day?
We just ended our second year of half-day.
Our second year of that. And do we have any test results as a result of students who were in the first year of pre-K and now finish what? Kindergarten.
We saw a dip in MMSR data, but we saw a dip across all classes. So I can't really say that the half-day, I can't say from that data if the half-day had that big of an impact, but we did see a dip.
Okay, and then did we have a reduction in enrollment because we went from half-day to...
Most definitely.
So that really hurt then?
Yeah, and our speculation on that was the issues around daycare.
Daycare?
Yeah.
And transportation, because they lost transportation? Yes?
No, they got transportation for half day.
Okay.
And where we saw the lowest enrollments, frankly, Ms. Beck will be interested in this, tended to be in the South.
Where in the South?
In the South. Our enrollment stayed high in the Northwest, but it was in the South where we seemed to lose most of the enrollment.
So less families of poverty participated in our preschool program when we reduced it to half day.
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Hagan?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay.
I don't know if it would be to make a motion to have the board make a decision in regards to which priority direction we want to give staff, or whether we can count on you to find extra money.
You want to propose a motion for them to find
sure.
extra money?
Oh, well, I guess...
I didn't know we could make that kind of policy.
Yeah. Well, which do you want?
Yard sale.
I think I would like to make a motion. I would like to have the motion be that we not fund the middle school athletics program, and we put the additional funds into additional classes for pre-K, unless you can find the money. But I don't think that can be a motion. So that's my motion.
There's a motion to move the $1.1 million from middle school athletics into pre-K. Is there a second? There is no second on that motion, so the motion fails, I assume. Okay. Till next time. Any other motions before I can actually thank our staff?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question, or you talked about, so when the county executive put forth this plan to expand the school board, he also talked about being able to use other county resources to support the school system. Can we ask you to liaise with the county executive office to find out whether there is additional funding, whether it be in park and planning or other areas that could support athletics? Similarly, with regard to school counseling, whether there are resources within social services as well that could potentially be reallocated to really expand and leverage some of the resources that the county executive has said would be available to the school system in lieu of this new reform that has been taking place.
Certainly, we're happy to follow up with our community partners and certainly at the county level to talk about some of our needs, to look at ways in which we can partner around these two areas. The other item that I wanted to mention as an aside that I think impacts some of the conversation is we also had discussion this year about high school athletics and the fee that was charged and not charging the fee anymore. And this was something that the board voted on to eliminate the, I think it's $50 or $55 per family for the high school fee. And again, these are ways in which we start to remove barriers for families and hopefully see more participation of families. So I just wanted to just remind the board that you did make that decision related to high school athletics.
Thank you, staff, for that excellent presentation on the budget. So we will move on, and now I believe we're at a point of accepting items number 10.1 to 10.7 under new business item as first reader. There's no discussion necessary for that, so may I have a motion to accept items number 10.1, 10.7 under new business as first reader?
So moved. Second.
So moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say nay. The motion carries. We've had our public comments. There are the follow-up items are in board docs, so there's nothing under 12.0, which leaves us to a motion to confirm actions taken in. What did I do?
We're not done yet. We got another 2
Never mind. Okay. Thank you for your patience. We are going to reconvene an executive session, and when we're done with that, we will then come out and confirm. We will publicly confirm our votes made in executive session. So I hope you all stay and stick around till we're done. Hang out with us. So I take it so we don't do anything to adjourn. We just. Public. So the public meeting for now is adjourned. Thank you.